Lay will be leading the House in debating this address. A number of issues that were raised by the President touching on the legislative agenda for the Parliament. And on the motion is that the House will take 4 days, 4 sittings to discuss this particular address. This morning's sitting will kick off that debate on the address. It was a 33-minute speech by the President that was made during the inaugural joint sitting of the 13th Parliament. And this morning, Deputy Speaker Honorable Gladys Cholei will be initiating debate on that address. Members are trickling into the chambers, of course, ready to take part in this debate on the address that touched on a number of issues. MPs, both the senators and the members of the National Assembly, of course, hailed that particular address, saying it has raised critical issues that touched on the Constituency Development Fund. Another issue that was touched on during that debate, touching on these two houses or the August House, is the Senate Oversight Fund. There was also the doctrine that President Ruto told MPs that he will respect the doctrine of separation of powers. Another issue that was raised is that the MPs should consider amending the standing orders that will enable cabinet secretaries to come on the floor of the House to articulate issues or agenda touching on national matters. As is, cabinet secretaries cannot come on the floor of the House because standing orders considers them as strangers. But that was a call that was made by the President that the House considers making such amendments or making that particular provision for the cabinet secretaries to be able to appear on the floor of the House, to be able to articulate issues that touch on the national agenda. A number of issues here will be considered. Members will be taking a number of time to give their views on that address. Of course, the debate on that motion has been allocated a number of time. The mover, who is the Deputy Speaker, will be taking 20 minutes to move and 10 minutes to reply. Then members will have around 15 and 10 minutes to make their contribution. Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Wetangula, as you can see on the screen, has stepped into the chambers. He will be presiding over this second sitting of the first session of the 13th Parliament. I will now hand you over for this live broadcast brought to you by PBU in partnership with KBC. Good morning. My name is Kamchemenza.
Natuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umeteua nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu. Tukusihi ututazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako ambao wameridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri yetu. Tukuomba uteremshie baraka zako sisi tuliokutanika hapa na utujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikisha mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili utukufu na sifa zako ziendelezwe na ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya hii nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Clerk, order number 1.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
No, there is none. There is none. Next order.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements. Order number 8, motion, debate on the address by the President, first allotted day.
Honorable members, we go to order number 8. The Honorable Deputy Speaker will move the motion as I directed yesterday. And just as a reminder, she has 20 minutes in moving. At the closure on Tuesday next week, she'll have 10 minutes to reply, by which time we'll have decided who the majority and minority is. She may surrender the position to whoever will be occupying the position to reply. Designated party leaders, that is the Honorable Ichung'wa and Wandai, have 15 minutes each, and all other members have 10 minutes each. It's also important to notify the House that we have quite a large number of colleagues who are first-timers, who have not had a moment to make their maiden speech. The tradition and rules of the House is that when a new member is making a maiden speech, they will be heard in absolute silence, no interruptions, no points of order. Chair will intervene. But for honorable members, try and resist any temptation to rise on points of order when our colleagues are making their maiden speech. Thank you. Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the thanks of the House be recorded for the exposition of the public policy contained in the address of the President delivered on Thursday, September 29, 2022. Honorable Speaker, I will also take this opportunity in moving the motion to do my thank yous and congratulations. First, I'd like to congratulate His Excellency the President and his deputy for their election, and also congratulate you, Honorable Speaker, for your election. I also use the opportunity to congratulate members of the National Assembly here present for your congratulations. Having been in the campaigns myself, I know that that is no mean feat. Congratulations again. I also want to use this opportunity to thank the great people of Uasin Gishu County, the city of champions, the home of champions, the source of champions, for electing me. I am greatly humbled by this opportunity. The fact that they allowed me time off the campaigns locally in Uasin Gishu so that I could undertake time in the national campaigns was a big sacrifice on their part and showed the great honor that they gave me. I know that I did not even pick my own certificate from the Electoral Commission, but the people of Uasin Gishu did it on my behalf and allowed me to have time to do larger duties there at the Bomas of Kenya. And for that, I wish to use this opportunity to thank them. I also want to finish my thank yous by thanking the members of the National Assembly for showing great faith in me by electing me as Deputy Speaker of this House. I also want to thank the members more specifically, because I know there are members who are from the opposite political divide who did vote for me. And for that, I thank you. And lastly, I wish to thank Honorable Farah Maalim, my worthy opponent, for the great sportsmanship he showed. He undertook that if I won in the first round, he would concede and would not go to the second round. And he's kept his word. Thank you. I wasn't a better candidate. You were the better man. Thank you for that, Honorable Farah Maalim. And I look forward to working with you in this House. Kenyans also deserve a thank you for having campaigned peacefully, voted peacefully, counted the votes peacefully, announced the votes in their various respective polling stations peacefully without any incident. That shows that our country has reached levels of political maturity that we have sought since independence. And in commenting on the president's speech, I think I wish to note that it was, to me, one of the boldest and most transformative agenda-setting speech. He has promised to transform the lives of Kenyans. I am particularly, and the people of Uasin Gishu, are indebted on the point relating to affordable fertilizer, affordable credit, because this touches on my own county, which is the breadbasket of Kenya. Also, on the point on agenda on initiating and ensuring that we have affordable housing in our country, I welcome this. And for me, this is something dear to my heart. Having worked in Kibra in a program called Shining Hope for Communities, which is run by two young people, Jessica and Kennedy Odede, and I've seen the squalor, I have seen the lack of sanitation that exists in Kibra, which is just one example. I now see in this speech that the dreams of the people of Kibra, where I've worked, will be able to have what they've always wanted: affordable housing, clean areas, safe spaces, and a place with sanitation and water, and power also. I also wish to comment on the issue that I hope and appeal to our members that when the matter comes before the House, it is something we should support, ensuring that we have a reformed social security system in Kenya so that we can end old age poverty. All of us know that we look after our aged. We pay for medical bills for our parents. We take care of our parents at retirement, no matter the fact that they have worked all their lives up to including to educate us. To know that that is something will be of the past, we will be having legislation coming to this House, and I look forward to it, as was stated in the President's speech, that it doesn't make sense to save 200 shillings a month and after 30 years only carry home 72,000 shillings. That must change. It will take painful processes, and each of us, I know, will be called upon to try and help. Particularly welcome also in the speech are the reforms of structuring our healthcare system and our access to universal healthcare for all. Again, this is something that every member of this House has endured. Everyone has no less than 20 messages a day relating to fundraising events for someone who has either died and has left a pending bill in the hospital, or is in hospital and is unable to get treatment because they cannot afford. We hope that this 13th parliament is going to be the parliament that will put that to an end forever. And that, I think, is encouraging, because it's an agenda that was clearly out in the President's address to this House. Honorable Speaker, I know I can go on and on this point and in moving this motion, but I wish to be able to stop there so that I can give other members, especially the new members who need to make their maiden speech, I would like to be able to donate my time to them rather than take the entire time. Thank you. And now I beg to ask Jerusha Momanye to second this motion. I hope she has come to the house.
Honorable Jerusha Momanye.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. You can come in.
Take your stand and second the motion.
I told you yesterday, the maiden speech. Oh.
Go ahead.
Honorable Speaker, I want, first of all, to apologize, but I have reached. Honorable Speaker, I rise to second the motion of the speech of the President, but before I continue supporting it, first of all, I want to thank the people of Nyamira County for having elected me the second time. I want to thank them, and I want to thank that person who gave me the name, Ntogoro, which gave me a great mileage, which made me to be victorious in the 2022 elections. And I promise that I will work for them. So, Mr. Speaker, I second the speech of the President. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable members, I'll now propose the question that the thanks of the House be recorded for the exposition of public policy contained in the address of the President delivered on Thursday, September 29th,
discriminating against the various communities that there are in my constituency, noting that Molo is a very cosmopolitan constituency. Mr. Speaker, I note that in the presidential address by His Excellency the President saluted the great women that have been elected in single-member constituencies and again re-elected in this 13th Parliament. Mr. Speaker, in the great county that I come from, the Nakuru County and City, we were popularly known as the Nakuru Girls because we produced the highest number of single women members of parliament in our respective constituencies, elected a woman governor and a woman senator. I say this as a proud father of a daughter, that my daughter can look forward to dreaming to be any person or any leadership position she would like to hold in this great republic. Nakuru is very unique. At the start of our county, we elected our senior most Honorable Jane Kihara. At the tail end of our county in Nakuru, we elected the youngest, who is yours truly speaking this morning. But of course, we are happy to have our newest members, the Honorable Mutai from Kuresoi North, and of course the Mamba that swallowed the Jogoo in Rongai constituency. Mr. Speaker, I would like to note the great number of youth leaders or young people that have been elected in this 13th Parliament. And this also has the highest record of young members who have been re-elected as members of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy that young people that I was elected with the 13th Parliament, to know just a few, the Honorable J.P. Mwirigi, who was the youngest in the 12th Parliament, my colleagues at Kenyatta University, the Honorable Didi Nyoro, the Honorable Karemba, and the Honorable Pato, all got re-elected. Mr. Speaker, this means that we have with us a record of people that are going to become career politicians. I've often said, Mr. Speaker, if you wanted to get a lawyer who has 30 years of experience, you'll get plenty of them. If you look for a medical doctor with 30 years of experience, you'll get plenty of them. But if you look for politicians, of members of parliament with 30 years of experience, they are very few. And the ones that are there now, for example, you as truly the Speaker now of the National Assembly, the Honorable Moses Wetangula, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto. And this means, therefore, that this breed of young people, that we are giving them experience in politics, among us will be our 6th, the 7th, and 8th presidents of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. His Excellency the President noted that the last election was issue-based. Whereas when I was campaigning for Kenya Kwanza in Molo constituency, I did not have difficulties explaining how President Ruto is a Kalenjin or how he is not. But our mantra at UDA, pesa mfukoni, quote unquote, would get everybody driven to that agenda. Because Kenyans are tired about politics of ethnic mobilization, and all they have learned is that when maize flour is sold at an expensive price, whether you are a Kikuyu or a Luo or a Kisi, the price is the same. When people have unemployment, when you're facing unemployment in the country, the people facing this unemployment is irrespective of the communities that they come from. So I'm very happy with this progress that we've made, and I hope that all of us are going to remain committed, that our politics in Kenya going forward will never again be based on our ethnic communities. Honorable Speaker, His Excellency the President noted the concern that your predecessor, Honorable Justin Muturi, had raised several times about the role of Parliament in oversighting the executive. Many a times, we issued invitations to cabinet secretaries to answer to audit queries or questions from honorable members. But, Mr. Speaker, even when these cabinet secretaries came to address us in this floor, Mr. Speaker, the answers were unsatisfactory. They used to give excuse after excuse how they would not be available to answer to the members of Parliament. And this really undermined the role of Parliament as an oversight of the executive. I'm very happy, therefore, to note that this Parliament will start reviewing our standing orders to allow these cabinet secretaries to come and answer this question on the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker. I'm particularly even happier that several of our colleagues have been appointed to the executive. The Honorable Aden Duale, the Honorable Alice Wahome, the Honorable Aisha Jumwa, among all the other politicians and ex-politicians that will now be serving the executive. As I congratulate them, I hope that they will not forget where they came from. I hope they will not forget the troubles they had reaching cabinet secretaries for them to have to raise questions or lobby for projects in their constituencies. And we therefore hope that when we go to knock at the doors of these people that will be in the executive, we listen to us the way they would have liked to be listened to when they served as members of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the President promised us that fertilizers will be accessible to wananchi. And true to his word, this fertilizer is now available in stores across the country. Mr. Speaker, this was a great depart from the economics of subsidizing consumption at the expense of subsidizing production. And Mr. Speaker, what we saw in the previous government, the subsidizing of consumption led to expenditures that could not be accounted for, and even trying to lower those prices, we never succeeded. Because research has shown that if you really want to subsidize the cost of a product, the easiest and the most rational way is to subsidize its production rather than its consumption, Mr. Speaker. I note, Mr. Speaker, that the president in his address, and I quote his speech, that we are overtaxing consumption at the expense of taxing wealth. Mr. Speaker, for a very long time, we have had the assumption that if you increase the rate of taxes, then you will collect more revenue. But scientific research has shown, for example, what in economics we call the Laffer curve, that you will increase the rate of tax up to a particular point, where a further increase in that tax rate will lead to collection of less taxes. And I'm therefore hoping that this 13th Parliament, as we look forward to debate the finance bill, we are not going to have the proverbial increase of the tax rates, hoping that we'll collect more revenues, but we're going to have a tax system that is sensitive to the hard economic times that we have, and noting that just increasing the tax rate will not necessarily lead to an increase in tax collection, Mr. Speaker. The President in his address talked about housing as one of his key agendas. In addition to providing thousands and thousands of jobs to our young people, this will also lead to a decent way of living for our people. In Molo constituency, Mr. Speaker, quite a rural constituency, we have a big slum called Kasarani. We have families living together in a single room. You have the father and the mother sleeping there, and adult children sharing that same tiny wooden room, Mr. Speaker. And I'm therefore hoping that when this project kicks off, that Molo is going to be one of the first beneficiaries, and we are going to provide decent housing to our members of this country, Mr. Speaker. On the issue of savings, yesterday I received a call from one of the constituents asking me to move a bill in Parliament to increase the age of retirement from 60 to 65. It is because the savings that I have been doing in NSSF is not enough to cater for them in their retirement, Mr. Speaker. And although this will be a pinch to us, in the long run, we need to be a saving country, and we need to save enough so that we don't overburden our children when we get old, for them to support our livelihoods. And with that, I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Dr. Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to comment on the President's speech. May I take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank you, to congratulate you on your election as the Speaker of this House. Mr. Speaker, may I also take this opportunity to thank the people of Seme for electing me for the third time. Mr. Speaker, this is a great honor and privilege. I don't take it for granted. Mr. Speaker, I listened to the President's speech, and let me say, it is the shortest President's address to Parliament that I've listened to in the last 10 years. Mr. Speaker, it is a fairly good summary of the President's manifesto and what he said during his campaign. But let me say, it was rather lacking in strategy. I believe that will come later on as we go into the details. But as it was basically a good summary. The 52 paragraphs actually covered everything he said during his campaign. It commented on the affirmative action in Parliament, where more women have been elected and are increasingly being elected, the re-election of many members, serving all Kenyans regardless of how they voted. The Speaker talked of the role of the ministers and the oversight role we'll have and them coming to Parliament. It's a talk of the support for the judiciary, investing in enablers of the economy, particularly infrastructure, and increased agricultural productivity, support for small traders, the youth, the mamamboga, the kinyozi, the makanga. All was in that speech. Credit provision, the Hustler Fund, better housing, universal health care through NHIF, better debt management, and how we reduce our borrowing, proposing that we reduce the current budget by 300 billion shillings, better tax management, improving our social security, support for national government constituency development fund, and the Senate oversight. So, Speaker, all was there. And as I said, lacking in details and strategy, and it is our hope that that will come when policies come before us in the House, because that's how it's be. But, Mr. Speaker, there was a striking lack of mention on two things that, in my view, are most critical in this country, Mr. Speaker. One is unity of this country. It was mentioned here and there. I didn't see the emphasis. Mr. Speaker, unity is the key to harmony and development, especially after an election that was bitterly fought, narrow margin, contested. We didn't agree with it, but it went to court, and the court made a ruling, which in my view, Mr. Speaker, was a little flawed because of the language. Mr. Speaker, it was enough to say that the evidence before us does not warrant negating the election. It wasn't necessary to go on words like wild goose chase, red herring, hot air. That, in my mind, flawed that decision. Despite that, we have accepted it. And Mr. Speaker, there is need for healing. And in paragraph 12, the President's speech again kind of didn't bring people together, referring to the role of the Deputy President becoming the opposition leader and vice versa. I don't think, Mr. Speaker, that is necessary at this point. And even in paragraph 10, reference to personality cults, I don't think those are necessary at this point in time. We need, Mr. Speaker, to create a nation. Mr. Speaker, we have a country called Kenya whose boundaries were defined by the colonialists, and we accepted it. We have a state defined by the Constitution, the statutes, and all the MDAs, the ministries, the departments, the parastatals, the agencies. But, Mr. Speaker, we don't have a nation called Kenya on this earth. Mr. Speaker, why do I say that? Because, Mr. Speaker, a nation resides in the hearts of people, and people believe this is ours, we all love it. We live it in together. We cry for it. We die for it. Mr. Speaker, this is something that in this country for the 60 years of independence, we have not fought for. Mr. Speaker, we have fought for control of the instruments of government and the instruments of power for the distribution of resources. We have never strived to create a nation. Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you, in this country called Kenya, if you stand in any of the streets in any of the towns and cities and say, Luos are this and that, Luos are stupid, this and that, or you say Kikuyus are bad in this way and that way, you insult them, or you say the Kambas and this, somebody will come and attack you because they feel that they've been attacked. But, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you this. If you go in the streets and say, Kenyans are stupid, Kenyans are thieves, Kenyans are this, nobody will attack you because nobody feels they have been insulted. Nobody feels that they belong to something called Kenya as a nation. That is why, Mr. Speaker, even we, very informed people, talk of the Luo nation, the Luhya nation, the Kisii nation. Mr. Speaker, this is a 1,000-mile journey that in this country we have not even made the first step. I thought the Azimio Kenya Moja, One Kenya Alliance, that in my mind is what we are thinking about. Even One Kenya Kwanza, again we all have it, but do we practice it? To me, Mr. Speaker, this is the bigger game that this country must start fighting for. Mr. Speaker, the other one is corruption. I didn't get much on corruption except in paragraph 19 when it came in the support for the judiciary. But otherwise I didn't. But this is the cancer that will eat, prevent any promises, dismantle any process that we will make to improve the welfare of our people. Any effort, if we don't address corruption, this document, this speech, seemed afraid to tackle that evil. And Mr. Speaker, we must look at this even in the appointments that are coming, and this House will be vetting people. I do not believe in the principle that we want to be guided by innocent until proved guilty. I think we should be guided by chapter 6 on integrity and morality, where we should say, stand until proved innocent, and therefore not fit to hold a public position. In my mind, Mr. Speaker, that is the direction we should go. Those two big principles should be the guiding.
Thank you, the Honorable Murugara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me to keep my word of yesterday that I would congratulate you today. Moses Masika Wetangula, for being elected the Speaker of the National Assembly by an overwhelming majority. And your deputy, the Honorable Gladys Boss-Sholei, my erstwhile classmate, and the one who knighted me, Sir George. The Speaker, I confirm that the National Assembly is in its safe hands, and we expect the very best in this term. Most exciting, so that we come here on a daily basis to actually deliberate on issues that touch on our country. Allow me also to say thanks to the people of Tharaka constituency who gave me a second term. It wasn't easy. Tharaka people are known to be brave. Sometimes they say they are warriorsome. And all that put together is that they rejected all tokens given to them and chose development. Otherwise, that is how I came into this house, and I owe them one, which is a big thank you. I also want to thank the people of Tharaka Nithi County because they lived to their expectation. They always promised to deliver, and they actually delivered to Kenya Kwanza more than 92% of the votes cast. That was not a mean feat, and especially to the UDA party, which got almost all the positions, together with the sister party, the Service Party, that brought to this house our woman representative, the Honorable Susan Ngugi Mwindu, and she is here. As we speak today, Tharaka people and the people of Tharaka Nithi are hungry because there is ravaging drought in that area. There is also no water, and we are calling upon the government to make immediate interventions to that county, to my constituency Tharaka, so that we are served with the food and water. I must confirm that to those who are newly appointed, I'll be knocking the doors. We need water, we need food, we need roads, we need electricity, and all this. So all those in those dockets, especially those who came from this house, I tell them not to forget us. Turning to His Excellency the President's speech, the Honorable William Ruto, as it has been stated by every speaker, it was the shortest of the speeches, but the most elaborate, touching on the Kenya Kwanza plan, a plan that was actually very well worked on, produced to the country, and it has formed the basis upon which this coalition came to power. The President has assured all Kenyans that he will serve all of us, irrespective of our voting patterns. And this is exemplified by actually going to Nyanza last weekend, where he went to pray. We'll be calling upon all Kenyans to embrace His Excellency the President, so that he is able to serve us as the symbol of unity for this country. He represents everyone and is going to serve everyone. He has also promised to ensure that the three organs of government are separate and distinct, and that the parliament in which we sit as the National Assembly and the Senate and the judiciary are going to be independent in all aspects, including financial autonomy. The Kenya Kwanza plan, which he elaborated on as the bottom-up approach, including the Hustlers Fund, which has to be set up. It is my submission that once the legislative assistance is sought by the executive so that we can implement the plans of Kenya Kwanza, this House is more than willing, more than ready to ensure that that legislative agenda is passed and the country moves on. It was quite elaborate and emphatic places or wherever jobless. Sincerely, as a House, we must rise to the occasion. We must now legislate in a manner that is going to assist our youths get more jobs. We have more investors coming in. We have more people putting down their money so that young people can actually get jobs. The trickle-down effect is what we are talking about, such that we do not always rely on money coming from the top. We now have to build the base so that we move upwards, the bottom up, as opposed to the trickle-down effect. Let us also become savers. We were told it's not a question of just consuming everything we get. And let that saving be commensurate to what we are earning, such that when you go to NSSF, your contribution cannot, you as members of parliament, you cannot contribute the same amount with the P1 teacher who has just been employed. Let it be commensurate so that we are able to save and we can borrow from those savings. The NHIF, which is very important, universal health care for every Kenyan, we must also contribute to it proportionately. There is no point of you contributing little money to take care of your family alone, when actually we know for sure you earn much more than the people we have up country. Let us pay enough for our family and a bigger number for our constituents, so that eventually, possibly at the end of 5 years, we have every Kenyan covered by NHIF, and they are able to walk into hospitals, walk out when they are properly treated. The housing project, which is part of the Big Four agenda that was collapsed because of various political reasons, now becomes the pet topic of our president. We must give him the legislative legal framework on which he can actually ensure that even those who live in the slums, in areas that are not very habitable, including those who live in deplorable state in our constituencies, are given better housing. Let us talk about infrastructure, because as I've said, my constituency, Tharaka, needs roads. We have numerous historic projects in Tharaka Nithi County, like every other part of the country. We need all these infrastructural development projects revived, completed, so that Kenyans can also enjoy development like the rest of the world. Electricity, he actually made a point on this, because there are many of the rural areas, including my constituency again, and my county, where the percentages are too low. Tharaka constituency possibly is at 30%. Gatundu South, Gatundu North may be at 100%. Let's move the money that is meant for those who are in 100% constituencies to those that are actually behind. This is what is called equalization, and we should not be shy to say these things because some areas in the country are more developed than other areas, as a result of which we are lagging behind. The president is the symbol of unity. We have said so. Let's embrace him. Let's support his legislative agenda. Let us support his budgetary plans, whatever comes, for as long as it is geared towards assisting Kenyans, so that Kenyans can live better lives. Kenyans, even our counties, can actually develop. We can collect more money. We can do whatever is good for the country. I have heard it said he may not have spoken much about corruption. Corruption, in as much as the monster in this country, does not require songs day in, day out. Sometimes the more you talk about corruption, the more we think that you may be actually trying to shield ourselves, to shield our eyes from hearing this. So it's going to be part and parcel of the agenda. Let me congratulate His Excellency, the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, because he's also a hands-on man. He has promised to assist the President deliver on the agenda, and we are looking towards this. Let me also thank His Excellency, the President, for he has done, or he has actually given us a historical event by appointing one of our own from Tharaka Nithi County, from Tharaka constituency, Professor Kithure Kindiki. Thank you for that. We have never had a cabinet minister, a cabinet secretary before, but now we have one. Thank you, Your Excellency. We know Professor Kindiki, and we promise he's going to deliver to the country. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Gilgil.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to first of all congratulate you on your election as the Speaker of this House and the Deputy, Honorable Sholei. I also rise to thank Almighty God for this very distinguished opportunity and privilege to serve in this House, now for a third term, having served with you in the 11th Parliament, in the Senate, and elected to this House in the 12th Assembly, and now elected for a second time in this 13th Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I take the opportunity to thank the people of Gilgil from the 5 wards, Elementaita Ward, Malewa West Ward, Gilgil Town West Town Ward, Eburumbaruk Ward, and Morindat Ward for having the confidence to get me represent them in this House, Mr. Speaker. I don't take it for granted, and I can promise them that the opportunity and the foundation that we put in the 12th Parliament, this Parliament can only get better and can only get bigger. And we will definitely work towards making it a model constituency, Mr. Speaker. I take this opportunity to also congratulate my colleagues in this House. And Mr. Speaker, I take it as a special opportunity to congratulate the women elected members who are representing single-member constituencies in this Parliament, the 29 of them, Mr. Speaker, and the 4 of them coming from the great Nakuru County. That is Njoro, that is Naivasha, that is Gilgil, and that is Bahati, Mr. Speaker. And we have shown the way that it is possible and it is doable, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am looking forward to this 13th Parliament for one reason, that it is a vibrant Parliament, more re-elections than have ever been in history. Mr. Speaker, we have never had 60% of us being re-elected in this House. I think it is a major milestone. That means that we have the institutional memory that is required to run this Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, this Parliament has also been restructured in terms of the committees. We know a lot of the work goes to the committee level, Mr. Speaker, and having 39 committees, that is 19 departmental and 20 that are select committees, will mean that work is spread out very well and the workings will be better, Mr. Speaker. I am also very proud that you served as a senator, Mr. Speaker, And I hope that these bicameral relations, just like was noted by the President in his speech, will improve in this 13th Parliament, Mr. Speaker, because we represent the same people. We represent people from our constituencies and from our counties, and that these relationships, the sibling rivalry that we have seen before, will reduce, that we work for Kenyans, whether you serve in the Senate and whether you serve in the National Assembly. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have gone round, because some of the people who are in the 11th Parliament in the National Assembly ended up being in the Senate, in the 12th Assembly, and they were complaining. So, and the same have also happened to others who have become governors, Mr. Speaker. So I hope that we realize in every place that we have been elected, that the sovereignty that we actually practice and are proud of, Mr. Speaker, is donated by Article 1 of the Constitution. It actually belongs to the people. So I hope that even the issue of the bicameral relations that we are talking about, even sponsoring of bills that is across by members from the two houses, can actually be actualized so that we have a better, smoother house, Mr. Speaker. I am looking forward to this Parliament because what we had yesterday is a good start of the 13th Parliament, Mr. Speaker, that this house becomes the area we debate more. We don't throw punches, we don't throw words. It becomes a debate floor, Mr. Speaker, that we can be able to respectfully debate regardless of what party you represent. And Mr. Speaker, that was also in the presidential speech, that it does not matter you came in through what party in this house. At the end of the day, Parliament is one. We must do our role of legislation, our role of representation, and our role of oversight as one house, Mr. Speaker. And to the presidential speech, Mr. Speaker, I'll pick a few issues. One thing he noted is that the unity of this country is not something we can bargain about, Mr. Speaker. Even if he was elected by the majority, the minority also must have their say, and he represents including the minority. And I think what he has already started to do, Mr. Speaker, even traveling to areas like Homa Bay last weekend and areas that he did not get majority of votes, Mr. Speaker, has shown commitment that he's willing to embrace every person, regardless of the area you come from. And I hope that we can get out of the mood, even as leaders, Mr. Speaker, that even if you're elected through Azimio or you're elected through the minority, when the president in your area, you show up. Because at the end of the day, we are serving the same people and elections are done, and now we have work to do, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of bipartisan support from this house, Mr. Speaker, the president actually was appealing, and not to direct, it is to appeal to this house, Mr. Speaker, that we support his legislative agenda to push the things that he would want to achieve at the executive, Mr. Speaker. And that means, Mr. Speaker, that even if you're in the minority, if something is good for your people, you don't have to just oppose it just for the sake. And the same, you don't have to also support something that does not work for your people, because at the end of the day, you will be accountable to your people. Mr. Speaker, the issue of health, which is very partisan, which is very pertinent, Mr. Speaker, is very critical. The issue of universal health care, we spoke about it in the 12th Parliament, but how much was done, Mr. Speaker? Just yesterday, a lady from an area called Ngomongo in my constituency was in the office. She's called Mama Kamingo in the office, Mr. Speaker, in my office. She's 73 years old. She uses NHIF to get treatment. And you know, at old age, Mr. Speaker, you will always need funds to go to the hospital. She has not been able to contribute for a whole year, Mr. Speaker. It may look small, but with COVID, with the drought that has ravaged the country, raising that money to actually put in the NHIF card is not easy, Mr. Speaker. What we had last Parliament is the issue of getting the elderly covered under NHIF and under UHC without paying. Mr. Speaker, we have good proposals. We have good policies. But where is the implementations, Mr. Speaker? Because at the end of the day, you get the cash transfer as a 70-year-old, 2,000 shillings per month, which, by the way, has not been updated for the last 3 or 4 years, Mr. Speaker. People who have reached that age are not getting that money. And even those that get it is late. And at the end of the day, if you have 2,000, you end up spending all of it on health issues, because you have arthritis, you'll have diabetes to manage, you'll have hypertension to manage, Mr. Speaker. You end up taking all that money to health. So at this point, Mr. Speaker, every person, and I don't think there is any member in this house who does not have a WhatsApp group to raise funds to actually raise medical bills, even to get bodies from hospital. Mr. Speaker, this agenda has to be thought out well, and I hope that the nominated CSs especially for health, will be very at the forefront to ensure that every person gets a good cover and is actually assured of treatment, Mr. Speaker. And the other issue on health is that as an agenda of the executive, it has to be a shared agenda with the governors and the county Council of Governors, Mr. Speaker, because at the end of the day, under Schedule 4 in the Constitution, this issue is at the devolution, at the devolved units, Mr. Speaker. The issue of having dispensaries and health centers operationalized is very critical, Mr. Speaker, so that we read the issue of getting people going for malaria, going for ARVs, going for immunization in Kenyatta National Hospital or Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, and we take it to the dispensaries, Mr. Speaker. That level should be able to cater for issues of malaria, of diarrhea, of immunization, of ARVs, of the issues that are small, Mr. Speaker, so that we are able to leave the issues of referrals at the national and at the level 5 hospitals, Mr. Speaker, and level 6, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of education, and I think the President also touched on that, and that also is coupled by the nomination of the CSs. If there is something we must get right in this country, is the model and the issue of education that we are talking about. And I'm happy that he has also started the issues in policy in terms of getting task forces to look at the model that we are looking at, and we are talking about the CBC, Mr. Speaker, so that we don't mess up a whole generation of tomorrow, Mr. Speaker. This issue of education right now, and I will tie it to the issue of CDF. Right now, so many children are at home. And I know many members are getting to be asked, we need bursaries, we need to go back to schools. Teachers are saying we cannot allow children in school because bursaries are gone. We need to get this generation back to school. The issue of free secondary education, Mr. Speaker, has not come out properly. People are suffering, and children, a whole generation will be lost if we are not careful, Mr. Speaker. The other issue, maybe to close it, Mr. Speaker, will be actually to talk about the issues of water, issues of housing, and I know many of us have slums, that this housing agenda of the President must be cascaded to the level of the constituency level. I have an issue in Bondeni, in Kasarani, and I hope that we can be able to actually expand that agenda to the rural constituency. But I take time to note, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honorable Rahim Dawood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first, let me congratulate you for being elected as our Speaker, and as well as the Deputy Speaker, Honorable Sholay, and all the members of Parliament from the 12th Parliament who have been re-elected, and from the 11th, as well as, Mr. Speaker, the independents who have been elected to this Parliament, being 12, and that I think has gone a long way to show that sometimes we do not believe in parties because parties shortchange us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to even thank the people of Nordimenti for electing me now for the 3rd time. And Mr. Speaker, being elected as an independent was a very, very tough job. But I thank my people of Nordimenti for having faith in me. Mr. Speaker, I am the 5th MP since independence in my constituency, which had another constituency which has been split, Bore constituency. And Mr. Speaker, the first MP was Harvester Angaine, who was Colossus, the king of Meru. After that came Honorable, I think it was Ntere Mbogori, and I'm glad we have our Mama County, Meru County, Honorable Elizabeth Kailemia, the daughter, is with us now. And then after that we had Honorable Muiraria. Then we have had one-term MP, Silas Murioki. So me being the 5th MP since independence, I'm very happy, and this is my 3rd term. Mr. Speaker, going on to the President's speech, first of all, I would like to congratulate the President, Ruto, together with his deputy, Deputy Rigathi Gachagua, on the election. It was a tough campaigns, and the worthy competitor, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, together with my former leader of NARC Kenya, Martha Karua, congratulate them for accepting that they did not win after the Supreme Court judgment. And I heard Honorable Nikal talking about the terms which were used in the Supreme Court. I mean, those were not offensive at all, according to me, but that being what it is, there is a government of the day, and the president has been chosen. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about the president's speech, where he talked about reducing the price of fertilizer. Yes, the price of fertilizer has been reduced to 3,500. But unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, that is as far as it goes, because if you go to the cereals board, yes, you will buy, some people will buy at 3,500. As soon as you are out of the gate, the prices go up to 5,000, and not everybody gets it, even those who have registered. I have complained to the administration, national administration. Mr. Speaker, we should go further because we have devolution in place. We have got devolved units. We have got even the NGAO, that is the ACCs, the chiefs, assistant chiefs. We need to take the fertilizers up to the point where the people are, to the sub-locations, to the locations, to the divisions, and not just to the county headquarters, because unless we do not do that, then we will not achieve what was meant to be done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we need to know regarding the Hustlers Fund. I believe it is a good idea if implemented well. Mr. Speaker, the members of parliament who are here and who were there in the 11th parliament, they know about the Uwezo Fund. And many funds in many constituencies, the Uwezo Fund has been depleted. Unlike some who are doing good, like my constituency, my Uwezo Fund from 16 million right now, I have dispersed up to 60 million, Mr. Speaker. So we need to replicate the Hustlers Fund, probably be based within a Member of Parliament's office so that we can join it together. We reduce the paperwork and the red tape and do it through the Uwezo Fund. It would be much better and easier to manage, but we should even do it in a way that people are told, the members of parliament are told that this is a revolving fund and not for free. It's not money for free, because until we do not inculcate that into our people, then people will not repay that. Mr. Speaker, the President spoke about informal settlements as well as housing. Mr. Speaker, we, like in my constituency, we've not had titles for 1 or 2 places for the last, from independence. Mr. Speaker, it is very important, if we are to empower our people, they should have title deeds to their property, because if they do not, then how do they even develop what they do not have papers for? So, Mr. Speaker, my place in Meru, which we have done surveys for a long time, and I wish the incoming CS for lands and housing will look at Shauriako, and that is an informal settlement. I'm not saying Shauriako to our speaker, but it is an informal settlement which is called Shauriako, which is next to the sewage plant in Meru, and next to the biggest open-air market, Gakoromone market, in the whole of East and Central Kenya. And Mr. Speaker, up to date, we have not got the titles. Mr. Speaker, the housing dream is a very good thing. One of my colleagues has already spoken about Kibera will change. I think it was the Deputy Speaker, she talked about Kibera being changed. Mr. Speaker, we need change everywhere. Where there are informal settlements, let's have slum upgrading projects, which were there initially, but the funding was not there, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is good that our President has promised the judiciary more funds so that justice can be dispensed. Mr. Speaker, in as much as we are saying justice to be dispensed, we would, and I think the President spoke about it even yesterday, judiciary, even the head of judiciary comes from my constituency, the Honorable Chief Justice Martha Koome. But I would want even her and the whole judiciary not to put roadblocks on any legislation which comes out of this parliament and delay whatever is supposed to be done. Because, Mr. Speaker, as we are speaking, we are speaking from two sides of the mouth. Where we are talking about the CDF Act of 2013 being said it is unlawful, yes. But we did changes in 2015 where now it is NGCDF, and it is two different things, because I believe in law, something is a different name, is not the same as the other. So, Mr. Speaker, the President in his speech talked about CDF being a game changer. I think we need now to know whether he has said in private, yes, he supports us having a CDF, but we need now to move with haste so that we can entrench this NGCDF into the Constitution. And I believe there is already one of our members of Parliament who is pushing for that, and we as members of Parliament, we need to ascertain that we need NGCDF, because kids are at home right now because the bursaries are not there. And if the bursaries don't come, and if we are not, when we talk about free primary or free secondary education, Mr. Speaker, there is nothing like free. Just yesterday I got a call from one of the parents telling us we are asked for this money for one thing or the other. Mr. Speaker, the other thing is about debt. Mr. Speaker, we need to reduce our debt. And I agree with the President that we need to reduce the 300 billion. But, Mr. Speaker, the 300 billion should not be removed from the development budget. It should be removed from the recurrent expenditure, not from the development budget, because we all need roads, we all need a lot of things in our constituencies, and we need that money for CDF. So they should not even think, when they are going to bring a supplementary budget, to remove the 45 billion of CDF, because that supplementary will not pass in this House. I believe that is the feeling of this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and want to congratulate you again. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Kilgoris.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much, and I also wish to begin by giving thanks to the people of Kilgoris for electing me to Parliament. It has been noted that this has been a long hiatus away from this House, but, Mr. Speaker, I have also spent useful time serving as Kenya's ambassador to China, and though that was a very useful moment. And I want to congratulate you, Mr. Speaker, for your election to this good seat. I know you are quite capable, and this House will sometimes enjoy some of your good humor. I hope you still have it the way I used to know. And I wish to congratulate the Honorable learned friend Gladys Boss for her election as your deputy. Mr. Speaker, sometimes back, there was an opinion poll that held that Kenyans were the most optimistic people around in the world, I think. And 10 years ago, we attended a very colorful ceremony at Kasarani. The ceremony was the inauguration of the Jubilee President and Deputy President, very well conducted by the now Deputy Speaker. And I was sitting next to some prominent Kenyans, and we watched the way Kenyans were watching the presentation of the agenda of government at that time. And I asked my senior colleague of mine who was sitting next to me, what do you think about what do you think about the new government? What do you think about the president and the deputy president? And that senior colleague, who is now deceased unfortunately, said to me, I think these two people will perform very well. And he was very optimistic that Kenya was going to go places. And they actually digitally showed us the Kenya of their dreams. and we were all very hopeful, and we went back home. Some of us went back to our legal practice and waited for the great moments to happen. 10 years later, Mr. Speaker, the successor of President Kenyatta had this to say. He says, I have news, and it is not very good news. Our financial situation is not very good. Mr. Speaker, the President of Kenya has said that the financial situation is not good. The economy is bad. In fact, the Deputy President has used much clearer words and said the economy is very bad. Mr. Speaker, of course, there are questions that would be asked, that we would like to ask, as to how we arrived at this situation. From a situation of optimism to a situation where we have now declared our economy to be very bad. We would have loved to do some postmortem on what actually were the causes of this situation. But I don't know whether that would help much. The situation as we find it now requires our attention. And this parliament should consider itself not as a war government or as a constitutional government or parliament, but in fact as a parliament that must sort out the economy. And more than anything else, the thing that will pain us, the things that we must set us to scratch our heads is how to bring back the economy to shape, because we aren't doing any good. The many things that we promised our people on the campaign trail depend on the economy. And unless we sort out the economy, there is very little else we are going to do. So we now wait for the government to present to us their economic policies to see what can be done differently. Because what I know, Mr. Speaker, is that most of the people who are in the Jubilee government are also in this government. The only consolation we have is that I hear that the president is very well advised by economists. I hope these economists will now crack this nut and tell us what ought to be done so that we can come out of this conundrum. Mr. Speaker, the economy is what has caused a lot of unemployment. And of all the problems honorable members will face in their constituencies, I think we will be able to tackle many. But I think the one that will give us a lot of disappointment is the employment issue. Where are we going to get jobs for the many young people we have today? If we don't sort out the economic problems we have, I tell you, many of us will not be re-elected because the young people do not want to hear about it. They want jobs, and they don't want you to go back and tell them that we went and faced sharks on the Jordan, because they do not know in the first place that there was a Jordan to cross. So we have to sort out the economic issues today and not tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, I noticed that the President has laid strong emphasis on agriculture. And coming from an area of where agriculture is the main activity, must say that the President's efforts should be supported. But Mr. Speaker, the problems are because of production. Production in agriculture is a very expensive thing in Kenya. Not just the fertilizer, but beginning from the tractors that you hire, the fuel that you put into it, and therefore the fertilizer. However, it is a good step that we have addressing the issue of fertilizer. Unfortunately, if you get farmers to go to the NCPB to buy fertilizer and say that they must be registered farmers, that is not good, because that is creating red tape. In fact, that will encourage corruption. Put this fertilizer on the shops, in the shops, so that people can buy them from there without having to get a signature from the DO or from the chief. They need to buy to access their agriculture, their fertilizer from the shops. Mr. Speaker, the President has addressed the issue of health. And as far as I can see, health is a very, very touchy issue. We are looking at it from the point of universal health care, and I think that is okay. But I would also like to ask a question, whether this house, although it is a house that believes in devolution, whether health is actually ripe for devolution. I think myself, Mr. Speaker, that by giving health to people down there at the county, before we prepare them properly, we are risking the lives of many of our Kenyans. And I think it is time for this House to reconsider and to whether this issue, health, shouldn't be brought back a little bit to where the experts are more, because not every governor is ready to see health the way the rest of the country would like to see it. I believe myself that we should not have devolved health too soon. We still need our doctors to be controlled centrally, to be posted centrally, so that we can be able to develop the facilities well. And Mr. Speaker, I think at some point the government decided to hire machinery, which they would have bought at the same price. We should now target the acquisition of X-ray machines, of MRI machines, of cancer machines, and place these within the hospitals in our localities. Mr. Speaker, I wish therefore to register my thanks to this speech.
Honorable Member for Endebess.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to register my thanks on the President's speech. First and foremost, I want to congratulate you, Honorable Speaker Moses Wetangula, for your election as the Speaker of the National Assembly, and also Honorable Paul Cholet for being elected as the Deputy Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the great people of Endebess for having seen it fit to elect me as their Member of Parliament for the third time consecutively. I want to assure them that I'll continue delivering the services as I've done before and make sure that there is great development within that area. Honorable Speaker, when you read our Constitution in Article 1, it says that all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with this Constitution. The people may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through this democratically elected representatives. On 29th, Honorable Speaker, I was glad that when the President came to this House, we had all the three arms of government, because the Constitution recognizes in the same Article 1 that the sovereign power under the Constitution is delegated to the state organs, and that is Parliament, the judiciary, and the executive. And when the three arms of government were able to be in this House during the President's speech, it brought us as a country together, and that was very important, Honorable Speaker. I listened, and I've read again the President's speech. When my senior colleague in the profession, but also the same, we are in the same category as members of Parliament, Honorable Nyikal, referred to Article 10 as being divisive in the President's speech, I had to reread it again. And when I reread it, the President said, I submit to you that the fact that the election was so close is an indication that what unites us is always much more greater than what divides us. With the support of Kenyans, we've lodged ethnicity as the central organizing principle of our politics, thereby retiring it for good, the ethnic mobilization and personality cults, together with their culture and practices of exclusion, discrimination, patronage, tribalism, and nepotism. Many of the young Kenyans in the street, Honorable Speaker, they do not look at themselves as Kikuyu, Sabaot, Luhya, or anything. They look themselves as Kenyans. This issue of people talking of maybe the Kalenjin nation, the Kikuyu nation, it is we politicians who are polluting the Kenyans. But when you sit down with your child to speak at home, they never think of themselves as any other person. They think themselves as Kenyans. And it is upon us to cultivate that culture among our people. In the President's speech, Honorable Speaker, the President talks of his administration allocating 50 billion every year to the Hustlers Fund, from which micro, small, and medium enterprises can access affordable credit to start and expand their businesses. Many Kenyans outside there are looking forward to this Hustler Fund, and they are looking into this House to see what legislation we can be able to provide, because as far as the President is concerned, he laid down his policy. He didn't have to give the details. It is upon us, because I've heard some people talk about why we've seen the President's speeches being very short. It lacks the details. It is the details that it is upon this House to come up with. How do we operationalize the Hustler Fund? The President has said we can be able to allocate that 50 billion every year to make sure that Kenyans are able to access affordable credit. They are able to access the Hustler Fund and do businesses. The mamambogas, the border-borders, and everybody who is outside there, your constituents. So this calls for the unity of this House to come up with legislation and regulations in which to be able to operationalize this Hustlers Fund. The President went further and said there is tremendous opportunity for the House to fully take up its role in resolving the systematic issues that limit access to affordable homes and affordable finances. And we've seen the President the other day going to Mukuru kwa Njenga and launching the housing project. We've seen him going to other areas and talking about the same housing projects. My friends, Honorable Kaluma and others from Homa Bay, you missed an opportunity, because I think your people, I don't know whether in Homa Bay town, people must be, I don't know whether they have enough affordable houses. Your governor was away, Honorable Kaluma was away, and you tweeted to say that you needed to have been informed. But it was in common knowledge that the President was going there for church service. But it was upon you to make sure that you welcome the President and raise the issues concerning your people, especially in housing matters. In the President's speech on matters health, which I'm passionate about, considering my background as a medical doctor and a consultant surgeon for that matter, the President talks about universal health care. And he goes further to say that we must be able to look at it right from the area of preventive, promotive, and looking at chronic illnesses. We are in a society where many of the lifestyle illnesses, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and other illnesses are setting in because of our lifestyle, our lifestyle nature. We should be able to look at issues of universal health coverage, right from the promotive, preventive, and chronic illnesses. We should also be able to make it affordable for every Kenyan, that every Kenyan can access insurance cover, because many of you, you've heard that we are moving ATMs. Many of you, when you go home, our constituents will come and say, I need a Harambe because I have a huge hospital bill, for my father, for my brother, for my sister. And it's not possible for all of us to be able to be raising that money for Harambee every now and then. But if these people are provided with universal health care, where you walk into the hospital, you are treated, you get medication. If it is an operation, you're operated. If it's a question of asking for any other investigation to be done, it is able to be done. You are given medication, and you walk out of the hospital. Then it will make life much easier for all of us. And lastly, among other things, is the issue of fertilizer subsidy. This, considering that Endebess is an area that is agricultural productive area, our farmers will welcome it, and we would want the National Cereals and Produce Board to have a better way of making sure that this fertilizer reaches to the farmers in a more accessible, efficient manner, so that we can be able to increase our production. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I want to record the thanks to the President's speech. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Bonchari.
Thank you, Speaker, for the opportunity. I take this opportunity to thank you and to congratulate you being elected as Speaker of the National Assembly, and Deputy Speaker Gladys Bose, who was my teacher at Parklands Law School. I also take the opportunity to thank the people of Bonchari for having confidence in me and electing me as Member of Parliament. I will be representing you in this august House through motions, a debate, statements, questions, legislation, as a way of representing you and your interests, as we talked, as you advised me during the campaigns. I've taken time to look and listen to the speech by the President in the 13th Parliament, and like it has been noted, that it lacks in detail, but I hope in due course there will be policies to support it, his intentions and wishes for it to be actualized. I know that it talks about cutting recurrent expenditure on paragraphs 40, 41, 42 of the speech. It talks about enhancing savings so that we have money for our investments. It talks about controlling the public debt, which has grown so astronomically. He also talks about the poor culture of savings, which undermines investments in this country. It talks about affordable housing. Now, with regard to savings and investments in this country, often we forget to take note that investments are both local and international and foreign. And when you look at what makes Kenya attractive or not attractive as an investment destination, there are a number of things that we need to learn and take care of. The cost of doing business in this country is quite high. You talk to any investor, foreign or local, the cost is pretty high, which needs to be looked at and be controlled through this 13th Parliament. In addition to that, there are inefficiencies, there is corruption, there are a lot of gatekeepers. When looking for simple things like approvals and licenses, it takes up to 5 years to start a business in this country. I'm writing a book with some people about doing business in Kenya, and when you do research, one of the things that stands out, Kenya compared to other countries in the region, is that we are not very attractive because of the reasons I just said. Now, in most cases, when we talk about affordable housing, we tend to focus on urban areas. But the reality is, for those of us who come from rural areas or constituencies, housing is a big problem. A lot of people don't have decent housing. I hope and pray that we are going to look at this so that we have decent housing for our folks in the rural constituencies like Bonchari. What we learn around and what we hear around is that our foreign reserves are dwindling the cost of living is skyrocketing. And as we talk about trying to move towards the free market, but let's take cognizance of the fact that we need to take care of our indigent and the poor members of society so that they are not disadvantaged, even as we want to move towards the free market economy. Even the most developed economies have initiatives or programs that provide nets for the poor and for the elderly people who otherwise are disadvantaged. The youth unemployment, particularly in Bonchari, stands at about 60%. We need to have a conversation now. We need to deal with the youth unemployment. It's a time bomb that needs to be addressed now, and I hope that there's going to be legislation in this House that is going to address this problem, which I believe is not unique to Bonchari, but elsewhere in the country. Our youth, our future, they have talents, they have the skills, they just want opportunities. The poverty index in Bonchari is one of the highest in the country, around 44%. And I hope that I'll be bringing statements or legislation or bills that are going to help alleviate this problem in Bonchari. The Bonchari people are very hardworking, they are good farmers, they just want opportunities, they want to be lifted, they want a little support so that they can fend for themselves. One thing about this country, particularly those of us who come from agricultural areas, the prices of our commodities are very poor. The value chains are inefficient, something we need to look at, something we need to, as parliamentarians, representatives of the people, we need to take care of so that the value chains are made more efficient and the farmers get a decent pay for their sweat, and they can be encouraged to contribute to supporting the economy and making this economy grow. After all, agriculture is the mainstay of this economy. Education standards in the Bonchari are not very pleasing. The infrastructure is very poor. Even when we heard about the allocations from the Ministry of Education, we didn't get as much. I'm hoping that in the current budget, and maybe budgets to come, we're going to have budgets that are going to support the infrastructure of our schools so that we can have the infrastructure and the environment that is friendly and is enabling for our students to learn and get the education and the skills they need to be useful members of society. Bonchari probably is one of the few constituents that doesn't have a TVET. I hope in the next 1 year or 2 years, we're going to have a TVET built in Bonchari so that for the many young people who want to acquire skills in plumbing, in masonry, and so on, can get a place where they can acquire these skills. The infrastructure in Bonchari is very poor. Our roads, energy, we need a lot of energy. I'm going to be pushing and hope that I get the support of this parliament so that we can have the roads we need and enable our farmers to take their produce to the markets. Our social protection in this country is something far from celebrating. Those of us who have taken these positions every day, you're going to get phone calls, you're going to get people coming and asking for help just because they are not able to afford the basic commodities and services that they need for their livelihood. We need social protection. We need the money that is allocated for the elderly people to reach them in good time. We need the record to be updated so that those who have fallen in that age group are taken care of and are supported so that they can be able to buy food, they can be able to buy their clothing, they can be able to buy their medication. I'm big for universal health care. This is something that we've talked about for a long time in this country, but it looks so elusive to be accomplished. I pray that this time it's going to be accomplished. You can be able to do it, because one of the things you're going to be receiving that from all our people is about medical bills. The cost of healthcare in this country is very high, and I hope that we can be able to find a solution to that. You go to any hospital, you go to any physician, when you come out, it's very high, and it's even worse for the ordinary people in the villages. I recognize that's the function of the county government, but I think we can support we can bring ideas, we can bring motions that are going to make our healthcare affordable and accessible to the people. Otherwise, we'll be attending burials every other time. Like in my constituency, there are so many. We can't afford to have that. It's unfortunate and it's something regrettable that in this century, in this era, a number of people in Bonchari don't have title deeds to their land, particularly the people of Simwaga, in Bonyando, in Ogiakumu ward, they don't have title deeds for their land. I hope that the government can look into this and make it possible for them to acquire title deeds for their land. The people of Ogiakumu, the people of Wamorenda, the people of Riana, the people of Mariba, I thank you very much, and I am here to work for you. I'll be advancing your cause. I'll be pushing your interest in this parliament, and I hope that we develop our constituency together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Member for Gatanga, Honorable Edward Wakili.
Madam Deputy Speaker, let me start by congratulating the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, and his Deputy Rigathi Gachagua for being elected as the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya, and also take this opportunity to congratulate Moses Wetangula as the Speaker of this House. And also, Madam Deputy Speaker, I congratulate you, my able classmate, Gladys Sholei, or also your election as a member, as a Deputy Speaker of this Parliament. Madam Speaker, allow me first of all to thank the great people of Gatanga for giving me an opportunity to serve them as their Member of Parliament for the next 5 years. That's a great honor and dignity, which I promise to reciprocate by serving diligently with all my might, knowledge, and wisdom God before me. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I want just to make a few remarks on the presidential speech, which, in my opinion, resonates very well with the great people of Gatanga. The great people of Gatanga are farmers and traders. And in the presidential speech, the president has addressed the issues of farming and has addressed the issues of trade. Madam Speaker, the president has elucidated on the need of the government to provide cheap fertilizer. The reason why the unga today costs 220 shillings is because of what you call added costs in the process of farming, from the seedlings to fertilizer, cost of input, and that's why in the presidential speech, I want to support it and say this, he addressed on the issue of production as opposed to the issue of consumption. And I'll happen and pray that as we go further, other than getting what you call cheap fertilizer, we expect to get subsidies in terms of cheap seeds, cheap inputs and implements, even reducing the cost of power, especially for farmers who pump water to do irrigation. Madam Speaker, I also want to address the issue about agro-processing, which is also connected with farming. Gatanga sadly has almost 60% of our youth unemployed. And we do believe that the moment we embrace agro-processing in agriculture, the way we have done in tea. We do it in avocados. We do it in macadamia. We also do it in tea. I do believe and trust that our youth can be able to get employment, and we're able to absorb all of them and be able to make sure that we are able to expand the net of the people who are contributing to the taxes of this country. And to that end, Madam Speaker, it is my agenda that to do meaningful farming, we also need to embrace what we call modern day technology. And one of the things to do is to ensure that we are able to avoid relying on what we call the natural rain and embrace irrigation. Madam Speaker, I'll bring in a bill shortly to address the issue of water in Gatanga. It's sad to mention this, that the Kaine Dam, which has been supplying the whole of Nairobi with water, all that water is carted away and not a single drop of that water is consumed by the people of Gatanga, either domestically or even in terms of irrigation. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'll bring us a bill shortly before this House to be able to address the issue of irrigation, whereby that water, so that this can have what we call equitable distribution of that water in such a way that the people of Gatanga, where that dam is situated, that water is used for irrigation, and people are able also to consume that water as well as we serve the people of Nairobi. Madam Speaker, I also want to bring up the issue about the universal health. One of the biggest challenges in where we come from in Gatanga, and I've seen honorable members elucidating to it touches in almost every corner of this country, is the challenge of health. The members of parliament are carrying huge loads. Every day we are getting messages, we are putting in WhatsApp groups, whereby each and every day we are contributing money toward medical support of our people. And the president elucidated that he's going to make sure that we are able to embrace universal health in such a way that our people will get the NHIF card, and the burden which they have, which you are busy supporting them, is offloaded from our shoulders, and they can be used that money doing other things. And therefore, I pray to the members of parliament, when the legislation is brought before this House, to revamp, restructure NHIF in such a way that it can be responsive to our people's needs. Madam Speaker, I expect the members of parliament to be able to support it fully. Madam Speaker, be given a fish. Kenyans want to be given a hook to go and fish. And the moment we are able to put aside 50 billion each and every year to support the hustlers, the mamamboga, the mtu mkokoteni, the kinyozi, what we are doing is to ensure we are empowering our people at the bottom to ensure that everybody puts a shilling in their own pocket and they can be able to contribute to this, to the economy. And to that end, Madam Speaker, I am planning to bring in a Vedas and hawkers bill to this House. Because despite the fact that we can be able to bring those funds to our people, there is no legislation which is recognizing the hawkers, which is recognizing the vendors in our streets, which is recognizing those small traders. What happened is that the county governments, whenever they see them on the streets, they chase them away and they cut their goods. So even before we bring that, before we bring the hustlers fund, we need to come up with a legislation to protect and empower and recognize those hustlers. Madam Speaker, sir, I also want to support the issue of the CDF, which the president also supported in his speech. The CDF, as we have seen in almost every part of this country, has done marvelous. And I want to assure the people of Gatanga that the CDF Act 2015 is alive and kicking. We shall be able to support education. we shall be able to support the food program, and we shall be able to support all the infrastructure development which are pending to ensure there is proper services to our people. And finally, Madam Speaker, sir, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to thank the President for nominating gallant soldiers in the CS position. I want to, first of all, make sure that I recognize the nomination of my mentor, Honorable Moses Kuria, Honorable Alice Wahome, Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, Kidiki Kithure, Jogona Ndongo, Rebecca Miano, and I wish and pray that this House will find favor and give them support and nominate them. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Thank you so much.
Honorable Member for Mandera South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will take this opportunity to, first of all, say thanks to my constituents for having elected me as their Member of Parliament. It was a tough election in my constituency and in many parts of northern Kenya, particularly because of the raging drought, and many pastoralists went through very difficult times choosing between tendering their animals and also participating in the democratic process of electing their leaders. And therefore, I thank them very much for having elected me as their member. I come from Mandera South constituency, which is a constituency in Mandera County, bordering a very difficult neighbor, Somalia on one side, and Ethiopia on the other side. Coming back to the President's speech, I would say that the President's speech, particularly between paragraph 5 and 7, encouraged a lot about the confidence that Kenyans have in Parliament and also the executive. The President's speech was very inspiring in the sense that he noted that a lot more members have been re-elected in Parliament and also a lot more members who are re-elected in Senate. And he also mentioned about the broad-based support the government has got in 39 counties, having achieved 25% in the 35 counties. And the President reminded us, and maybe it is a challenge to us, that the confidence shown in us, both as Parliament and Executive, must be translated in terms of raising the bar to serve Kenyans, and also to ensure that there is accountability to the electorates who have elected us. As a member of Mandera South, I think my people that I represent in Parliament will definitely be happy to support the legislative agenda of His Excellency, the President, because the agenda actually is transformative on many issues that affect the people of my constituency. The President particularly talked about people living in, people living in the region where I come from, northeastern, particularly Mandera County, have historically felt left behind or marginalized. But the President's speech was very inspiring because he said his administration will be an open and transparent administration, and he assured us that his government will serve, quote, all people in all wards of each constituency and all constituencies in every region. That was very reassuring, and it is very hopeful for us, the constituents who live particularly in peripheral areas of this country like Mandera. The President's promise to seek additional resources to support the bottom-up scaling of justice, as well as his promise of allocating Kenya shillings 50 billion to the Hustlers Fund, is particularly inspiring because majority of the people I represent in Parliament happen to be at the bottom of the pyramid, and both initiatives which is part of the president's legislative agenda, that is bottom-up scaling of justice, and the Hustlers Fund, the 50 billion Hustlers Fund for MSMEs, is a timely and most welcome idea. And I would say, Madam Speaker, that we need bottom-up scaling, not just in scaling of justice, but also scaling up of key government departments in some of these peripheral constituencies like where I come from. Like, for example, we need to have NHIF offices in that part of the world. We need to have, for example, birth and death registration departments in that part of the world, ID registration offices in that part of the world. So we need not just scale up justice at the top level, but we also need to scale up justice bottom up in some of those key departments that I've just mentioned. The plan of scaling up productivity in agriculture is also a very welcome idea, particularly from the region where I come from. And I would emphasize particularly that the need, the livestock part of the agriculture should be given equal prominence, just like the crop part of that agriculture. And I think when we talk of consumption and subsidies in favoring of supporting and investing in production, I think that initiative should go beyond fertilizer program and also improve livestock production as well. My take there is, just like we have seen the support to fertilizer, we need to see some kind of subsidy in terms of livestock production so that we can have livestock development and improvement in our production. And I am planning to bring on the floor of this House a bill on livestock insurance, basically to deal with the perennial drought problem, which wipes out animals, livestock that is the main economic lifestay of our people in that region, so that if our livestock die, people can be able to insure them for compensation. Electricity, the president's speech talked about electricity as a major hindrance to development, and the idea of planning to facilitate the development of innovative and effective modalities to provide better off-grid system is very welcome. I come from a constituency where a large part of that constituency is not connected to electricity, and electricity goes along with, for example, connectivity of internet and telephone. When you don't have electricity, you may not have access to the internet. And given the importance of internet in this country now, for example, even for those who are in business, most of the procurement processes in the county and at the national level are done through online system. So if you are not connected to electricity and you are not connected to internet, it means some of Kenyans who are disadvantaged will not be able to access those opportunities. Even for students who join university, nowadays you have to do it through the COOPs, and it's an online thing. So if you are not connected to electricity, that's a major problem. The planned restructuring of NHIF to make it a better fit for purpose of social insurance is a good idea. Definitely is an idea which resonates very well with us, including the restructuring of the NHIF and NSSF. The most important point I would also like to mention here is the question of drought. And the president mentioned that the response to drought to 33.5 million Kenyans who are affected in 23 ASAL counties. The president talked of some solution in terms of mitigation, but I will say that plan should go beyond mitigation and look at the adoption measures and how to deal with loss and damage. For example, I come from this region where drought is a cyclic phenomena. And when we talk of cyclic, when you are in that part of the world, you are either struggling to get out of a drought situation, or you are preparing to get out of one, or you are preparing to get into one. And that is the cyclic nature of the drought in that part of the world. And drought has been a problem in that part of the world majorly because of the climate change, a climate which has been affected by pollution, pollution which has majorly been contributed to by major powers with big industries that contribute to the pollution of our environment. And I think we need as a country to look at how we approach this matter, especially with the COP, that is the Conference of Parties 27 coming up in Egypt very soon. We need to look at this question of climate change and pollution so that the principle of the biggest polluter pays can also be put on the table and we approach it as a country. Because this idea of giving our people relief every time there is drought, I think we can go beyond that relief and start asking the biggest polluters of our climate to start compensating our people, because the problems that we are suffering now in northeastern and many other parts of northern Kenya are a result of people who are polluting our environment millions of kilometers away. And therefore, I think that question of mitigation as well as...
Time is over.
All right, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Member for Marsabit.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important debate on the presidential speech. But before I get into that, Madam Speaker, I want to congratulate you and also our Speaker. I also want to congratulate our President and the Deputy President for running a very serious campaign and for winning the elections and for all that is in place now. I thank God for giving me the opportunity to be here in the 13th Parliament, as I thank the people of Marsabit for electing me and for giving me the opportunity to sit in Parliament, in 13th Parliament, on their behalf. Madam Speaker, the presidential speech was one of the best from my experience, and he spoke on the matters that affects every Kenyan, matters that has been affecting us. And for the last few years, Kenyans have faced challenges due to COVID-19, poor economy, the drought that is affecting, and they needed to hear that message of hope from the president. And so the message came at the right time, whereby Kenyans were eagerly waiting, and he spoke to the issues that affect us, as I said. He was able to cover every part of the country in his speech. He also, in the brief speech, he was able to demonstrate high quality of leadership with good understanding and showing people that he's ready to keep the promises that he made during campaigns. Madam Speaker, the President spoke about the elected or re-elected members, together with women who have been elected, and also about the peaceful elections. That, to me, means a lot, because when members are re-elected, then it means that we are building our leaders, we are building confidence in their leadership, and that they'll be able to provide that quality leadership and also finish some of the projects, and there is continuity in the work that has been begun. When he touched on the women that have been elected and encouraged women in leadership, it gave me a lot of hope, putting into consideration the challenges that women go through as they go through elections, as they give themselves for leadership positions, the challenges they face from the people and from their counterparts. Madam Speaker, this shows
that our president is ready to work with women in a very special way, such that come 2027, we'll have even more women. Mine is just to encourage women with dreams to be leaders, with dreams to be one day members of parliament in whatever capacity. I just want to encourage them, because it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of prayers, and it takes a lot of determination. You cannot just sit and say, yes, the government is for us as women. But I just want to encourage women like me to work hard, to fight for their space, and to be there so that they can be elected by their constituencies. Madam Speaker, again, the President touched on the peaceful election, and that gave me a lot of hope, because the issue of ethnicity that has always been there is no longer a problem to us. 2022, we went through a lot of dynamics. Kenyans united, Kenyans elected the leaders they wanted without putting into consideration clanism and ethnicity. This is something that has affected many parts of the country, and especially where I come from, though not in election time particularly, but it is something that has dragged Kenya in a big way. It has hindered development. It has stopped us from electing visionary and capable leaders. But this time round, Kenyans have demonstrated a different way of dealing with that, and it gives us hope that soon and very soon we will get out of this challenge. I congratulate our country and the citizens for remaining peaceful throughout election time, and also for bearing in mind what unites our country. We are together, we are one nation, we will live together. It has given us a good example of taking care of each other and being your brother's keeper. His Excellency has assured us that in his administration will be open, transparent, and will rely on oversight. Madam Speaker, giving assurance to Kenyans that his administration will be open enough and transparent, whereby we know our past experience. This will give every Kenyan the confidence to give their best to the nation. We know that Kenyans are very hardworking people, and everything depends on the leader. By the fact that he has given us the assurance, I'm sure this will encourage the 30 million, the 40 million Kenyans who are working hard every day to feed their families, to even go extra mile so that our country can be one of the best. He also, in his speech, touched on the idea of CS to explain policy and answer questions on the floor of the House to enhance accountability. This is one of the best things that can happen, and it gives us good working relationship. Accountability is one thing that has been missing in our country, and by doing this, we'll be able to feed the country well with information, as information is power. Every citizen will be following what is happening, and as questions will be answered on this floor, in this floor, members will know that the members of the parliament are doing their work, and the cabinet secretaries are also doing their work. With that good representation, then we are only assured of good progress. Madam Speaker, the President also spoke about affordable credit which makes a huge difference in the rate of business growth. Access to affordable credit is what Kenyans need today. Families have lost their businesses since COVID-19 came. Families have lost their businesses because of poor economy. Families have faced financial challenges and constraints. Many have committed suicide. Many people are depressed. People have developed terminal illnesses, and they are not able to sustain their families. This has affected Kenyans in a very negative way. The speech gave a lot of hope, and especially the idea of affordable credit makes a huge difference, as he says, and Kenyans will be revived. People will be able to revive their businesses. People will be able to enhance their businesses and start their businesses and move on. Madam Speaker, there is no better gift to our citizens than this. In addition to that, he mentioned about the 50 billion Hustler Fund per year. This is a big relief. As we know, poverty is one thing that has affected our country for many years. By doing this,
Honorable Member for Sabatia constituency. Honorable Member, oh, he's there, okay.
Thank you, Madam.
Member for Sabatia, I think you better go to the back. There seems to be a mic working.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity that you've granted me to address this House for the first time. And before I say a few words, I want to thank the President of the Republic of Kenya and his deputy for being elected in those offices. I also want to thank the Speaker, the Honorable Moses Wetangula, and you, Madam Speaker, Madam Boss Sholei, for being elected by this House as the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker. I also want to thank the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, the Chief Cabinet Secretary of the Republic of Kenya, who happens to be a resident of Sabatia constituency where I represent. He assisted me so much, and I must say thank you to him for the support that he gave me throughout the campaign period. I also want to thank Sabatia people for the opportunity that they have given me to serve them as their area MP for the next 5 years. We have 6 wards in Sabatia, which I would like to name with the speed. Liaduyo Izava Ward, where I come from, Chavakali Ward, Sabatia West Ward, Busali Ward, Wodanga Ward, North Maragoli Ward. Those are 6 wards. The people from these wards overwhelmingly supported me, and they voted me in as their MP with the highest number of votes, and I would like to thank them so much. I also want to thank my woman rep, Madam Beatrice Sadagala, and the outgoing MP, the MP who was there before me, Alfred Agoi, for the support they accorded me. I must thank them. I also want to thank my opponents, whom we battled so much. They gave me the experience that I required to emerge the winner, and I also must thank them because they were worthy opponents, and I must thank them for being there to help me get to where I am. The people of Sabatia have a lot of problems, and just to name but a few, we have youth unemployment, which is hitting hard in that constituency. And I must say, we must do something to ensure that we are rectifying the situation. We have poor road networks, which is also making connectivity in the villages and to the nearby constituencies a very big problem. So we will be seeking to push this agenda through this House to ensure that we have good roads through the CDF that we are hoping will be reinstated very soon. We have bursary issue, where in the past we have been seeing discrimination in the issue of bursaries, and we are seeking to ensure that once CDF is reinstated, we will do equitable sharing of the bursaries based on the need basis. We also have the housing problem in Sabatia, where many people are living in abject poverty that they cannot put up homes for themselves. We have leaking roofs, which in the past we have tried to work on a few, and we are seeking to continue doing the same through the programs that we are going to set in the nearby future. Touching on the President's speech, I singled out one element to do with the Hustlers Fund. The President said we will capitalize on existing technologies both in the public and private sector in distribution of the Hustler Fund. I'm urging the people and especially the youth in Sabatia to tap into this by going for ICT training so that they can be part of the Hustler Fund distribution, which I'm very sure is going to work well for them. I also want to commend the President for proposing transformation of KRA from Kenya Revenue Authority to Kenya Revenue Service in a bid to make it a people's friendly. One thing is that when we are paid, especially for those people who are earning salary, a big percentage of that money goes to KRA through pay. And so this one is supposed to, the change of name from Kenya Revenue Authority to Kenya Revenue Service is supposed to make KRA a friendly partner to the people who are paying taxes through the same organization. Far from that, security has been a problem in our home constituency of Sabatia, where there are so many cases of rising cases of insecurity, and this, the security organization in Sabatia, our police stations are understaffed. So we'll be seeking maybe through this House, when the standing orders are amended to allow cabinet secretaries appear before Parliament to answer to questions, we will be putting questions to the cabinet secretary in charge of internal security to ensure that our police stations within and across Sabatia constituency are well equipped and well staffed to ensure that we are increasing the security situation in our constituency. Far from that, the President also touched on subsidizing fertilizer and bringing the prices down to 3,500 shillings. I want to report through this House to the people of Sabatia that our fertilizer was received at the Chavakali NCPB depot, and the farmers should be ready to purchase the same fertilizer at that rate through that depot. I want to thank the President so much for the second time for having stood with some of us to ensure that we are making it to this House. Lastly, it was supposed to be the first, but I thought it should come last. I want to thank God Almighty who made all of us come to this House, and I'll seek all MPs who have been elected for the first time and those who are in, let us stand together. Let us ensure that we are working for our people. And I'm very sure my neighbors in Emuhaya, Amisi, Vihiga, and Luanda will stand with me as I will stand with them to ensure that we are addressing the issues surrounding our constituencies in a good way to make our county of Vihiga a better place than we found it. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Malava, who will be then followed by a member for Migori County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before I register my thanks to the President's speech, I would like to congratulate you for being elected as a Deputy Speaker and Moses Masika Wetangula as Speaker of this House. Madam Speaker, I also want to thank the people of Malava for electing me the third time as their MP. I think it's because of what I did for them. They had trust in me, and I want to assure them that this time again, I'll serve them so diligently to the levels that will satisfy them as their MP. Madam Speaker, I also want to thank our President, William Samoei Ruto, for being elected as our President, and most importantly, for him proving that he's a honest person, he's a trustful person, because as I speak, I'm speaking from the position of ANC, who joined hands with him, UDA, and Fort Kenya. What he pledged that he would actually grant us, he has lived to this. He has not been so deceitful, and I want to thank Moses Wetangula and Musalia for choosing to work with William Ruto, because even the people of Western are so happy that this time around, for the first time, as we usually vote, it's the first time the Western people have really benefited from the person they have supported, unlike before, where some of them you suffered so much, like Wetangula, I remember in the last parliament, he gave a lot of support to a particular friend, our neighbor. He actually demonized him. We recall what happened in the Senate. We recall also what happened here in the National Assembly. So thank you, Mr. President, for being faithful, for being honest, avoiding politics of deceit. Now to the President's speech. Madam Speaker, some people have been asking, even I've been hearing here, that the President's speech was so brief. But Mr. Speaker, our President seems to be a very brilliant man. We look at his speech of half an hour. Interestingly, it captured the aspirations of most Kenyans. So whoever is imagining that it was so brief, maybe the lengthy bit of it is now what we are trying to air on the floor of the House. What touched me most, Mr. Speaker, was the issue of loans, particularly to small-scale persons, the so-called hustlers. Mr. Speaker, I have a case, particularly for us, persons of Western. Most of the persons in Western have a phobia for loans. This is from the history the people experienced with the AFC loans. In the 1970s and 1980s, our people used to get loans from AFC, but most of them, these loans did not help them. Instead, when it came to repayment, because of the high interests, because when the loans came about, most of our people went for it, and what they were giving us surety was land. And most of them, because of the high interest rates, were defaulting, and most of our people lost land to AFC, to the government. So these loans have been so difficult for them to go for. When they had begun opening to the loans, Madam Speaker, unfortunately, the institutions that were giving these particular loans were also now asking for very high interest rates. So again, these people had developed some fear for the loans. But I'm very happy for the President to have actually talked about ensuring that our hustlers get money at lower interest rates. This will really boost the economy, because we know most of us are where we are because of actually accessing loans affordably. Mr. Speaker, even as our hustlers get this money, I would urge that the law, we design the law such that it does not actually, these interest rates do not change along the way. Because what happens, again, sometimes when you're collecting this money as a loan, along the way it changes. Banks are really fond of this, that you take a loan which tells you the interest rate is 13 per annum, but along the way it also changes, so it makes it so difficult for the hustlers to operate. Madam Speaker, we also know that when it comes to these small-scale persons, they pay taxes. You realize that currently we have so many taxes. We have taxes from the national government, we have taxes from the county governments, So, Mr. Speaker, I would that as we develop this, we also take care of the numerous taxes that are actually affecting the small-scale persons who will really go for these particular loans. And I want to thank the President because of his commitment to the hustlers, the so-called Fuliza, for which has been hurting our people most. Some action has already been taken. I'm also seeing some action is being taken by Cooperative Bank of Kenya, lowering some interests and appealing to persons to go for their loans at affordable rates. Mr. Speaker, or Madam Speaker, sorry. The other thing that also took me with a lot of interest is the NHIF, Madam Speaker. When you look at NHIF, the way it operates, most of the people who are really paying a lot of money, in my opinion, is like the hustler. Because when it comes to me, who is earning, and most of this what these MPs are earning anyway, we are earning over $1 million. And what we are paying for over $1 million, what we are paying for NHIF is 1,700 every month. But the hustler is required to pay 500 shillings every month. When you look at the rate the hustler is paying, which is 500 shillings, you compare with what I'm paying, which is 1,700, it's actually the hustler who is paying a lot of money. Madam Speaker, this is a step in the right direction where we actually contribute to this depending on how much we are earning, so that the rich, the well-up persons like ourselves, can contribute more so as to carry these people who are really even relying on us to help them in terms of medication, to help us in so many things to do with their health. But Madam Speaker, something that I might also want this NHIF to do is currently what happens with the usual hustlers. They are restricted to only one medical facility. For example, me, I have employees whose families are in the rural and themselves work here. But Madam Speaker, they are restricted to only one facility. So now the question is, when the one I'm working with falls sick, you know, he has now to travel all the way to up country. And interestingly, now NHIF is, for example, looks like it's for the well-up persons who have a lot of influence. When us fall sick, we go to any hospital as listed by our insurance companies. The NHIF normally follows us there to take care of our medical expenses. But how come when it comes to the common mwananchi, they are restricting them to a particular facility, which is only one, instead of having several of them, because this is what it is. It's a national, we're talking of universal health care to all Kenyans. If we restrict them to one facility, then we're also being restrictive to these particular persons. Madam Speaker, what is also of interest is the Hustler Fund. And I would argue that probably we have come to a stage where we have to harmonize these funds. You know, Weso Fund, Youth Enterprise Fund, all those that they come into one fund that can be useful to our people. Madam Speaker, our experience, or my experience, when it comes to group workings, it varies from one community to another community. I've realized that when it comes to Weso Fund, which goes to groups, the issue of formation of groups is a challenge somehow to most of our youth, to most of our women. I would argue that when it comes to the Hustler Fund, and together they merge with Weso Fund, we individualize these funds so that we are talking of individuals who take these funds and they become responsible by themselves. Finally, Madam Speaker, I want to applaud the President for choosing most of the cabinet from here. The last government collapsed because of the so-called technocrats, CSS, who did not have the feel of the people who put them into government. They were so rigid in terms of their operations, but I want to thank the President for choosing persons who have tested politics, who know what politics is all about, persons who will open their doors to the sitting MPs to access them for the sake of the persons who have actually sent them to Parliament. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I register my thanks to the President's speech.
Thank you, Member for Malava. We now go to Member for Imwar Dikir. Honorable Johanna Ngeno.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for also getting this opportunity and to make a contribution towards the presidential speech. And first, before I make my contribution, Madam Speaker, I wish to congratulate the President of the Republic of Kenya and his deputy for that election. I also wish to congratulate the Speaker and you yourself, Madam Speaker, for winning also the election in this House. I know the Senator, the Speaker, the current Speaker, was also the Senator of Bungoma. And I also wish to congratulate him for winning that particular seat also in that particular area. Madam Speaker, I also wish to thank the people of Emurwadikir for finding it also good and useful to elect me back to this House for the third time, and also giving me an opportunity to serve in a new government. Remember, Madam Speaker, this is a new government, and serving in a new government is a very important opportunity where when the government is forming new issues and also partaking the matters of the country, it's also very important. Madam Speaker, I wish to also say that the speech of the President was a very important turning point in our country, Madam Speaker, and I think that is actually what I'm going to tack on. I used to state clearly that I support the speech of the President, which dealt with so many things, Madam Speaker. Number one of the issues which the President raised in this House is the fact that the intense election which we undertook on 9th, Madam Speaker, had so many bruises in this country, and it was very intense competition, and there were a lot of issues which were being undertaken. And Madam Speaker, I used to say that the President mentioned that the country needs to come back now together and work together and move forward. Madam Speaker, the President dealt with the issue of the plan which he has for the country. The President mentioned especially the issue of the housing that he wants to bring as a very fundamental issue in his government. Madam Speaker, remember our country, most of the people in this country live on temporary housings. Most of the people in the country live on slums. And Madam Speaker, I think it is a very important issue for the President to have put it as one of his undertakings to ensure that people live on good houses, and houses also which can be affordable. Madam Speaker, we pay rents. Several employees in this country, Madam Speaker, pay rents. Rents which, if it was to be accumulated, Madam Speaker, it would have bought houses at the time or the time those people are employed. Madam Speaker, I think it is a very good idea, and I wish to support the President and say, if it was possible, Madam Speaker, to even divert the rents or the house allowances which most of the employees are being paid in this country, Madam Speaker, towards buying these houses. Madam Speaker, I think at the end of retirement of these employees of government, people would have bought houses. Madam Speaker, also the President talked about the food sufficiency. Remember, currently as we speak, Madam Speaker, there are some areas which are ravaged by famine, drought, and all those, Madam Speaker. And I'm happy the President looked at the question of subsidizing fertilizer, the production, not even the end. Madam Speaker, even on the fuel issue, the President was also proper in stating that he wanted to remove the subsidies of the end products so that we can, if we were to subsidize, we subsidize the production. And that will actually, in the end, bring down the price of those foodstuffs that we are using. Madam Speaker, the President also talked about the 50 billion money that is to go to his agenda of the Hustler Fund. Madam Speaker, this was his very major campaign tool while he was going around the country. And Madam Speaker, I believe these 50 billion, Madam Speaker, will go down in a big way to assist the hustlers who are down there, the women, the men, the youth, who will be accessing this particular fund, Madam Speaker. The Speaker Madam Speaker, the President also talked about the management of public resources. And I think, Madam Speaker, for a long time, our country has been losing a lot of funds, a lot of money, which are allocated to different ministries, Madam Speaker, because of wastages and because of mismanagement. And I think mismanagement and wastage is bigger than even corruption, Madam Speaker. So if the President was to put more scrutiny on the question of management of resources and management of, and actually the question of wastages, Madam Speaker, the country can come back to its vibrancy. Madam Speaker, I think also the President addressed the question of corruption. And by putting resources on the judiciary, Madam Speaker, I believe if judiciary is empowered and given its autonomy, Madam Speaker, they can deal with the corruption cases firmly and in a very fast way. Madam Speaker, remember, the arms of government that are meant to deal with corruption are the DCI, the EACC, and the courts. So, Madam Speaker, if these autonomous bodies are given proper funding by the government, Madam Speaker, then I believe that corruption will go down in this country. It is actually not the executive that deals with corruption. It is not even this parliament that deals with corruption, Madam Speaker. It is the DCI, the EACC, and the cases that ends up in the courts. Madam Speaker, if we allow the courts to do their work properly without twisting, without intimidation, Madam Speaker, I believe corruption will come down in this country. Madam Speaker, the President also talked about the debts, which has actually put this country down. As we speak, Madam Speaker, we are told of trillions of money which this country is paying every year. Actually, we are talking about doing a budget of collecting around 2 trillion in this country in the form of taxes, and we are paying around 1.5 trillion to the debts that the country has incurred, remaining with only around 600 or around 500 billion, Madam Speaker, which is not even enough for recurrent expenditure. That means, Madam Speaker, we are even borrowing to pay the recurrent expenditure, an undertaking, Madam Speaker, which is very wrong. So I believe the statements the President made about the debts incurred by the country is very correct, and we wish to support him in that undertaking, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the President also talked about the health, and I believe, Madam Speaker, that although the health part of health has been devolved, Madam Speaker, we still believe, just like one member was stating here also, that health should not have been devolved, or if health was devolved, then parts of health should have remained with the national government so that it has proper management. Madam Speaker, remember, many people are admitted at hospitals, and these people don't even pay, or they cannot manage to pay the bills in those particular hospitals. Madam Speaker, the President talked about enhancing the NHIF so that it can easily pay for the people who are taken to hospital. Madam Speaker, there are so many people who are selling parcels of lands, people who are selling almost their fortunes because of hospital bills. And I believe if proper enhancement is made on the NHIF, Madam Speaker, then obviously these people will not be incurring those much losses. Madam Speaker, the President also talked about the Equalization Fund and the CDF. Madam Speaker, Equalization Fund has been in this House. It has been in the budgets. It is in the Constitution, but no particular, there was only one disbursement which was done by the government. And I believe this government will put more effort to ensure that those areas which had been marginalized for long will also benefit from the Equalization Fund. Madam Speaker, the question of CDF, Madam Speaker, as had been stated majorly by most of the members, is that we need to align it with the Constitution so that the CDF can continue helping the people in our areas. Madam Speaker, remember now schools have been opened and parents are complaining of the fees because there is no CDF at the moment, no dispersal of CDF. So, Madam Speaker, I wish to support the speech by the President, and also I wish to congratulate members who have been appointed to the CSS positions, and we are waiting to pass them here, scrutinize and pass them here. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. Next is Member for Game. But before even he starts, I just want to assure members that we are doing well, and we'll have sufficient time even in the afternoon for those who don't get time now. So we appreciate your interest. And we do still have at least 6 or 7 members who can go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Allow me to congratulate you for your election and that of Honorable Wetangula. Having said that, allow me to thank the people of Game for having given me a second chance and for having voted with confidence and acknowledged the developments that I've done for them during the past 5 years. Allow me then to comment on the President's speech. I think from the onset, the President mentioned that the elections that are conducted were very competitive. I think he took cognizance that even the difference in his victory was just 200,000. And therefore, he's cognizant that this country was divided into two. And I believe, given the tone of his speech, he's going to work hands-on to ensure that Kenya is united. Having said that, part of his speech, he mentioned on the need for the reduction of 300 billion. I think it's something that is possible, but I think our technocrats at the Treasury have an easier job to do. If you were to ask me, the easier way to reduce the 300 billion would be to look at the last 5-year absorption rates in all the ministries. If you look at the percentage absorption, majorly, it borders about 65 to 70%. So if you had to use absorption rate based on the ministries, it will be much easier to reduce the 300 billion without specifically looking at the line items. So I encourage the technocrats of the ministry to look at the absorption in line ministries to determine how efficient a ministry is in absorbing their budgets. He also spoke about agriculture subsidy. The world over, agriculture is not meant for profitability. All countries, including America, including the UK, they subsidize agriculture so as to ensure that the citizenry have food on their table. So I support that initiative. What we need to do is to look at the framework, the regulations that will govern distribution of fertilizers to the farmers. And I urge the relevant ministry to think about when Kenya attained independence, we had officers in the field who are able to collect data and ensure that the farmers are supported. I encourage the county governments to rethink about that strategy if you have to ensure our food security is sustained. He also spoke about the Hustler Fund, which I believe will help the hustlers. But more importantly, it's important, I think, is on our foothold to ensure that the regulations are done better than the way we distribute ways of funds. As you'd realize, once the Hustler Fund has been, the framework is set for issuance to the hustlers at home, it is important that you're clear whether the Hustler Fund is going to be given as a grant or is going to be given as an interest-free support to the hustlers. Because majority of citizens will believe that this Hustler Fund is for free. Then the leadership from the functional cooperative ministry will have a problem in recovering the Hustler Fund. So it's important to think about it that way. The President also spoke about KRA, which I think is important for the country. I think for a long time, small businesses in Kenya have been closed by KRA. The mistake they do, as they close these small businesses, the many Kenyans that are employed by these small businesses lose jobs. and their families end up suffering. So I believe if we rebrand KRA to Kenya Revenue Service, they'll be able to reevaluate their mandates and ensure that they treat those who pay taxes in a way that creates traction for them to pay more, not in a way that they look at paying tax as a punitive measure of killing businesses. Also, I think he spoke about the cost of living, but what he did not speak about, which he missed in his speech, the president missed an opportunity to tell us how we are going to lower the cost of electricity. It is only in Kenya, the whole of Africa and the world, where supply and demand law does not work. In a country where you have more electricity than demand, the price of electricity should go down. In our country, for example, we produce about 2,900 megawatts of electricity per day. The consumption in the evening when Mama Mboga is cooking is 2,237. It means we still have a difference. What the technocrats should ask themselves, how do we create traction for the 600 megawatts that is not being used, so that we can use that to lower the cost of electricity to the ordinary Kenyan at home. And I urge him to relook at the Lifeline program, which him and the former President Uhuru Kenyatta started, where they were charging 12 shillings per kilowatt hour for the ordinary Kenyan. I think we are here to ensure that Kenyans enjoy cheap electricity. We are here to ensure that the manufacturing sector becomes robust, because we are able to create traction for consumption of our kilowatt per hour charge, so that this country can grow. It is important to note that as we talk about lowering the cost of electricity, it's important to note that the country is investing in nuclear. I think site characterization has been done in Lamu, but we have not got funding to ensure that we can have a nuclear reactor in Lamu, in Kilifi. What is important to note, this will help in having a robust health system in the country. If you have a nuclear research reactor, it will help the country in the production of isotopes that is useful in the treatment of cancer and in the research of both agriculture and medicine. Issues like COVID, issues like Ebola will have ultimate technological solutions to help the country manage the menace. So it's important that as we focus on issues that are going to reduce the cost of living, we focus on issues that will help sustain lives in the long run. The President spoke about health, which I think is a good thing, and I believe that from a CDF perspective, from a county perspective, we need to have a formal framework where when we are giving NHIF cover as constituencies, it's not duplicated at the counties. So we need to think as members of parliament whether NHIF is going to be given to the counties or is going to be given at the CDF level. Last but not least, the President did not talk about how he's going to stabilize the shilling. I expected that he would mention that he's going to encourage those who have kept their money abroad to bring the money back, and that he's going to give the thieves an opportunity to get money back to this country. I am sure and I'm certain that in the last cabinet there must be CSS who ship their money abroad. I expect that in the near future there'll be traction for them to bring money so that the shilling can stabilize. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity.
Thank you. Now we shall have member from where?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. I want to start by congratulating you on your election as the Deputy Speaker of this House, and your Speaker, Mr. Honorable Moses Wetangula, as the Speaker of the National Assembly. I'd also like to thank the great people of Moya constituency for electing me to this august House and for electing me as their first female member of Parliament. I promise them that I will do everything within my capacity to live up to their expectations. Allow me, Madam Deputy Speaker, to speak briefly on the presidential speech. And I'll touch on a few areas. On healthcare, in his speech, Madam Speaker, the President spoke to the issue of universal healthcare for all. We all know that a healthy nation, Madam Speaker, is a wealthy nation. Our people, Madam Speaker, are out of reach of the expensive healthcare in Kenya. They have resorted to self-medicating. Others are even going to herbalists because they cannot afford the expensive healthcare in this country. Madam Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's a very good start that the President mentioned in his speech that the universal health coverage is going to be taking care of chronic ailments. We are all, as members of Parliament, in WhatsApp groups where we have to raise funds for chronic ailments, expensive chronic ailments like cancer, Madam Speaker. Families have been drained financially and cannot even make ends meet. So with the delivery of universal health care, I think the country will be headed to the right direction. On judiciary, I support the President's speech in increasing funds for the judiciary. This is indeed an indication that all the constitutional government agencies going forward will be working independently and with utmost independence. On the subsidized fertilizer, Madam Deputy Speaker, I wish to support the President in his speech where he mentioned that we are going to have a policy on production subsidy. And going forward, I hope that the subsidy production is going to be extended to other areas like certified seeds, herbicides, acaricides, and others. This way, Madam Speaker, we shall be food secure and even increase our food reserves. Madam Speaker, the President also did mention something on private-public partnerships. It is my prayer that these PPPs are going to come up with projects that are going to harness the overflow of water into the Indian Ocean. It is only in Kenya where we have floods and we have famine in the same country, and we cannot marry the two situations. Madam Speaker, I support that if this is done, if the water harnessing projects are taken up by the PPPs, that we are going to be food secure, we are going to increase our food production through irrigation, and that we are going to also increase food in our reserves. We could even, Madam Speaker, be exporters of food in this country. I thank you, Madam Speaker, but overall, the President's
speech was full of hope for this country and was full of inspiration. It was a great speech. I thank you.
Thank you, Member for Mwea, for being brief. And now we shall have a member for Mumias East.
Members, Honorable Speaker, sir, you got me off guard, but let me try to see what I can say. I've just come to realize that there are many things that are happening in this house that maybe before I speak what I have, let me begin by just saying thanks to my people of Mumias East constituency for giving me this opportunity. More so to the women of Mumias, you trusted me. You say that you'll give me your votes without giving you anything. So I'll serve you in full capacity. First, Madam Speaker, there is this issue of the monos in this house. Madam Speaker, with the people who are the first timers, we are not being given time to address. Even sometimes when there is a very good motion for us to contribute, we are always told that to wait a bit we cannot comment. So, Madam Speaker, it's very much unfair for people like us. So we want to seek your intervention going forward so that we can also be given time to give our contribution going forward. Number two, we also have, there are those committees, like right now we have had our president giving out his speech. And in his speech, when he was giving it out, he said about our economy and how we can revive our economy. And you can realize that there is this committee called PIG. And you realize that many members in this house, they are really salivating for that PIG. My request is that those people who have been there previously and they have not provided leadership in terms of oversight in those PIG, they should not be given an opportunity to be in those committees so that we can have right people to provide oversight. We have seen many parastatals in this country, like Nzoia Sugar, others are not performing very well. And this house should be providing enough oversight to do the necessary job. When the president talks about the issue of the electricity, I support that move very 100%. Because you realize that the cost of doing business in this country is very high. And it's very important that right now we must legislate on how we can reduce the cost of electricity by allowing other consumers so that it should not be only the Kenyan to provide electricity in this nation. We must do away with that monopoly. And even Kenya Power is not doing so well in terms of that. So it's also another area, as we're going forward, we need also to legislate on that. I also want to congratulate him when he spoke about our issue of the agriculture. And this is an area whereby we need to do value addition. Most of the things are being imported, things that have really weakened Kenya shilling. And so we must also do a lot in terms of research and get to know going forward how we can make our life for our Kenyans to go down. Another issue that I'll also address is that about the issue of I've been brought in this house because I've been fighting for the revival of Mumias sugar. And you realize that the sugar industry has been taken over by cartels in this country. You find one person only has 60 companies, but our industries for the government are not performing so well. So I want to ask this house that we must push forward so that we can have the sugar bill going through so that we don't, and there is that person, that animal called AFA. Mr. Speaker, sir, Madam Speaker, sir, my wish to you is that AFA must be disbanded because that AFA, and this issue, because this is an agricultural economy, we cannot say that all food crops can be, every crop is being put as food crop. So let the sugar be a cash crop. So they have, and that's why there is a lot of confusion in that AFA, Madam Speaker, sir. Madam Speaker, sir, there is also, we are having a lot of issues to speak. Madam Speaker, sir. Madam Speaker, pola pole ndio napata. Aya. So I also want to ask about this issue of electricity. Like most of the women there, they were telling me that when I go to the parliament, they want to see me on the TV when I speak. And so there is that called REA, or something of the sort. It's not performing so well the way Kera is also doing its work. So my request is that we need to get more transformers in our villages so that more women can get electricity and follow programs the way it's happening the other side. So, Madam Speaker, sir, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful in this, my then speech. As youth, we are going to deliver. My minutes are they over or is not yet? I also want to I want to congratulate Madam Boss Sholei. You know, when we were, you have a lot of information. In terms when we are there, you guided me last time when I was asking many questions. So you provided leadership. But most important thing, give us more time to express our issues. The issue of the veterans, tuliwaangusha veterans. So we are all equal in this house, and we must not. I was monopolized in Form 1, and I cannot be monopolized in this house, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, member for Mumias East. Thank you, member for Mumias East. And thank you for the compliments. I just want to assure members we still have today and we have tomorrow. So we'll be able to have, many of you will have an opportunity to speak. But just to respond to the member for Mumias East, no one is doing what you are implying to do, which you were informed by the speaker is unparliamentary language. So I won't respond, I won't mention that word. But you'll all have get an equal opportunity to be able to speak. In fact, you have donated 5 minutes of your time voluntarily. So now we shall have, and I've seen many members who have put in interventions, but at the same time, they are on the queue and we are actually almost reaching them. So obviously, I know you're trying to catch my attention, but definitely I can see everybody from the screen here. So let's now have the member for Mwingi West, and will be followed by the member for. Just go on. I will.
Thank you,
I think
Madam Speaker.
Next will be the member for. I think he's also trying to.
Give me this opportunity to address this House first term. Madam Speaker, let me take this earliest time to thank, appreciate, and acknowledge people of Mwingi West for re-electing me second time to represent them in the August House. Madam Speaker, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank and appreciate Almighty God for giving Kenyans peaceful elections. But all in all, let me appreciate the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, and all the principals, including the President and Deputy President, for accepting the verdict of the Supreme Court, regardless of the outcome that was actually produced by the Supreme Court. Madam Speaker, we are taking these responsibilities during the most difficult time we are facing the global challenges such as inflation and drought, conflicts in almost all the parts of our Eastern Europe, that is Ukraine and Russia. All in all, we need to forget the past and stop blaming or apportioning the failures of past regime and concentrate with what is on the earth, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the President was very articulative in terms of the issues he raised. He was brief but very articulative. Number one, he celebrated the issue of dislodging ethnicity in our country. We are yet to see it in practically, Madam Speaker. And we are patiently waiting to see how he is going to balance the appointments. I'm talking of the CSs, the permanent secretaries, the ambassadors, and everything during this during this period, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is also another issue President actually articulated, which made every Kenyan happy. And I would like to say he committed in front of this August House and in 2 houses that he is going to serve Kenyans fairly. Madam Speaker, let us wait. We give President time, but we expect each and every appointment to address the issue of gender, ethnicity, and religion. So I salute President for that. Madam Speaker, President committed to rely on both 2 houses for oversight duties. And I am calling upon my colleagues who committed to preserve, to protect the integrity of our Constitution. Let us not make a decision based on how our parties are going to dictate us, but on the basis of how we are going to protect the interests of the Kenya. And that is why the President said he will overly rely on these 2 houses in matters of legislation. The other issue that came is facilitation of cabinet secretaries to appear on the floor of the House, the August House, to answer the questions members have been facing. The last Parliament, 12th Parliament, we had a lot of challenges. Cabinet secretaries failing to attend committee meetings after some consult. I think this will be, it will be appreciated if we can have them on the floor of the House to articulate their issues on the floor of the House, Madam Speaker. The other issue President promised the country was scaling up productivity in agriculture. But, Madam Speaker, let me be frank, we have started on the wrong foot. We cannot allow GMOs to take place in our country. We know the impact. We know how GMOs can be detrimental to our nutrition, Madam Speaker. That is why we need to address the issues of scaling up agriculture in terms of constructing dams, adding more other dams, water pans, and we need to emphasize the issue of clean agriculture instead of reintroducing GMO. Europe have not seen GMOs actually operating, and even developing countries are emphasizing on clean agriculture more than GMOs. So I'm calling upon the President to focus on irrigable lands, issues of other dams, water pans, and dams to ensure there is plenty of food production in our country. Madam Speaker, I cannot emphasize on the issue of affordable credit facilities. Many of the Kenyans have got great ideas, great business ideas, and they only lack capital to implement what they have in their minds. And the President is committed on ensuring there is free and affordable credit facility in our country through the creation of the SME, which we just saw that ministry. Then the CRB has really been punishing Kenyans. The approach on credit scoring has been very punitive, and we would check the President to, I hope the President will commit what he promised Kenyans in terms of changing the formulation of CRB, the way they have been doing things to credit scoring system, Madam Speaker. The issue that we need also to address, and which really addressed, was the issue of capital projects. Madam Speaker, we have got so many stored projects in our country, not even in our constituency. I am just reminding President one project, Kabati Mingwani Bondoni Road, which has stalled from Kitui Kibwezi Road. We would like to see, I would have actually wished President that day to commit that he is going to complete all the projects initiated by the previous regime. And I'm actually urging him to do so. so that we can have completion of all the projects which stalled. Issues of water, issues of roads, issues of electricity, and we will be very happy as Kenyans to see that happening. Electricity. Jesus Christ, this is a department that needs serious attention, and I'm happy President acknowledged it. We have got so many fake transformers which were installed 10 years ago in our country, not even constituency alone. There is also inequality in terms of distribution of power projects, electrification. There's also issues of metering. You find that most of the time, Kenya Power or REREC actually installs electricity, but they end up delayed in installing meters, and we have been facing this issue. We need adequate and timely distribution of electricity and metering, Madam Speaker, as the way the President put it. There was issue of management of public debt, and I'm happy this House has created a committee on public debt management, and we will look at that. When I don't have an issue of borrowing money in this country, the issue is, are we borrowing money to do projects at the right price and implement the right project that will spur the economic growth? That is the issue I am having. Madam Speaker, we can speak so much, but allow me to comment on the issue of CDF. So many students, so many parents are eagerly anticipating President to issue an executive order ordering CDF to be distributed immediately to our constituencies, Madam Speaker. With those few remarks, I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Member for Mwingi West. Now we'll go to Member for Kilifi North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's Kilifi South and not Kilifi North.
Apologies.
Thank you. First of all, Madam Speaker, let me take this opportunity to congratulate you for the position you hold. Indeed, for people like us who are following what you are doing, you really earned it, and your past experience actually is in tandem with the position you are holding. Congratulations, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me also take this opportunity to say thanks to my people from Kilifi South. It's one constituency which normally does not elect an MP twice since time in history. But they found value in electing me for the second time. I really appreciate them so much. Straight to the presidential speech, Madam Speaker. The speech was in all ways very exciting. The presidential speech was very good. It really touched most of the areas that we were interested in, more especially when he talked about the CDF. As we speak right now, Madam Speaker, all these calls which are coming, students are out of school because they have no money. For the President to see that, to have recognized that it plays a vital role in the community, we really appreciate that, and I hope this Parliament will move very fast to align it so that in the future, those who are supposed to benefit from it can benefit. The issue of managing the GDP is another thing that also was well received by the people. Madam Speaker, all said and done, in my opinion, the only observation that, to me, I think need go down well was the time that the President took to present his speech. The speech was so short. We were expecting so much from the President. Members of Parliament actually were ready to wait until 7 to hear all the basket that the President was carrying. But I was surprised why the President made it so short. And I know him very well. He's my friend. He's not the person who maybe in the evening would like to have something somewhere. And also Mama Rachel was seated there. I don't know why he was so much in a hurry. We wanted to have time with him. In fact, at some point, I was going to tell him, don't run away like Murie, the way he was being told. Murie, don't run. But I could see the President just walking out in a time when we seriously needed him. Why am I saying this, Madam Speaker? There are quite a number of serious issues that we expected to hear from him. One, the issue of land acquisition and squatterism in Kenya. the place where I come from, more especially look at around cost. 80% of the land is cost is actually a reserve of government properties. And yet, there are so many people who do not have a place to stay. There is serious problem of absentee landlords, which to some extent, those who have access to the Ministry of Lands and headquarters have taken advantage of this opportunity, transferring these parcels of land into their names and selling them off in their interest, forgetting the plight of the people that are undergoing. This is one thing that needs to be addressed. And it's not only at the coast, it's actually nationwide in Kenya. And we wanted to know if there are any structures that are being put in place. There are so many commissions, the Ndungu report, so many reports regarding land. Nothing has come to this floor to know what is contained in those reports. Yet, people are looking forward for the government to address this. This is one thing that I wanted to hear from the president. The other thing also I wanted to hear from the president, in the year 2020, we had a global forum here at KICC on matters regarding the blue economy, kwa Waswahili uchumi samawati. In that conference, we were told the biggest resource that Kenya is sitting on, the biggest wealth that actually Kenya can benefit from is from the blue economy. If you look at the ocean, you look at the waters, the lakes, Lake Victoria, Baringo, we have been told there is immense resources down there. And we know there are some organizations that have been established to make sure that we are able to access the potentiality of these resources. But now, nobody knows what is going on. We were told thousands, millions of jobs are lying there for the youth. But up to now, we have not seen anything. We wanted to hear something from the president regarding that. The other thing that also I wanted to hear from the president, the issue of corruption. Corruption has eaten our country. To be honest, the poverty level that is being realized in each homestead is as a result of corruption. Last year, we had the president, the just retired president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, complaining that Kenya is losing close to 1 billion every day, 2 billion every day as a result of corruption. 2 billion, that translates to 60 billion in a year, in a month. In a year, it translates to 720 billion. This is not pocket change. This is money that can change the lives of our people, women, children, to a better level. But this issue was not discussed. It was not actually came into the fore, Madam Speaker. This is one thing that I equally wanted to hear. The other thing that I also wanted to hear, we have so many government parastatals which actually are non-performing. They eat on the economy of the country. We are spending so much resources on these parastatals. What is in stock so that whatever is being spent on these parastatals can translate into value of the people of Kenya? These are other things that I also wanted to hear. Unfortunately, it never came out. Madam Speaker, this Kenya, Madam Speaker, this Kenya has come a long way to see all these challenges. Indeed, what Honorable Elisha was saying here, there are some innovatives that need to be empowered. He talked about the issue of the nuclear energy and the nuclear board and the empowerment of the nuclear board. As we all know, everybody who contracts cancer today, Madam Speaker, has to rush to either India or some of the Arab world because they have perfected in the manufacturing of nuclear isotopes which treat cancer. Many of our folks in the villages are actually dying out of this problem or out of this disease. We have the Nuclear Energy Board with us here, but for over 10 years, it has not made any stride. Right now, they are putting up a plant somewhere in Kilifi North. Are there any measures that are being put in place to ensure that this organization makes a leap so that our people can actually be able to access this medicine for the sake of having hope of life. Madam Speaker, with those few remarks which I've made, I really appreciate for you giving this opportunity. And I know, as much you were on the other side as Mio and you people in Kenya Kwanza, the promise the President had made in this House when he was giving speech, that he is going to ensure that Kenya remains and works as one, we are yearning to see that. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Kilifi North, you said. Now we shall have a member for Sigawet Soin constituency.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity so that I could also register my thanks to the President for the speech which he gave in this August House. First and foremost, Madam Speaker, let me take this opportunity to congratulate the President and his deputy for being elected to lead this country, and also to congratulate you and the Speaker for being elected to preside over the affairs of this August House. Madam Speaker, may I also take this opportunity to thank the great people of Sigawet Soin constituency for seeing it fit that I come back to Parliament. I represented them in the 11th Parliament. I got to stay out of Parliament for 5 years, and I think the thought that comes into my mind is that to consider is a good thing, and to reconsider is even a better thing. I want to thank them most sincerely from the 4 wards of Sigawet Soin constituency, that is Kaplela Artet, Soliat, Sigawet, and Soin. I promise, Madam Speaker, that I'll serve them diligently as per the oath of office which I took. Madam Speaker, coming to the subject matter of our debate this today, I want to thank the President for his exposition of the process of transforming this country as per his agenda. My colleagues have alluded to the fact that the speech is short. To me, Madam Speaker, the 52 paragraphs were fittingly short. We will be able to get more details, of course, in the legislative proposals, in the policy interventions, in the regulations, so that we can be able to give the President the support he needs to be able to transform this country. Madam Speaker, my colleagues have spoken on quite a number of issues, and I would not like to go into them. But in brief, I want to thank the President for the decision that he has taken to reduce the debt in this country. The fact that the President says within 3 years we should be having surplus in this country is quite good, and I want to commend him for that. It is, of course, dangerous for a country to have the kind of spiraling debt which we've been witnessing in this country in the last few years. Madam Speaker, on the issue of savings, the many tourists that come into this country, they are ordinary people. They are not necessarily the rich people from the countries they come from. But the culture of savings in those countries has been improved to the extent that even the lower income people would be able to go for tourism in other parts of the world. We want to impress upon our people to make sure that for whatever they earn, there's a bit of which they will put aside for savings. Madam Speaker, there is the reform on the education sector in this country. CBC had very, very good strategic intent, but the burden that it has given to our pupils, the burden that it has given to our parents, Madam Speaker, requires that that system of education be reformed, without, of course, losing the strategic intent which made us change from the 844 system to the CBC system. Madam Speaker, the President talked about water for all, and I want to say it is a good thing that we need to have water. My constituency, much as people may think, Kericho is green and raining throughout. I come from the most marginal part of Kericho, and we need water so that at least our people can be able to do irrigation, people can be able to have domestic water for domestic use. Madam Speaker, something that the President touched on is the NGCDF. Madam Speaker, this kitty has been very transformational. If you compare the kind of development that we see in our counties. The county governments get more money than us in CDF. But when you look around all our counties, you will see that there are more projects funded by CDF and less projects funded by the county governments, even though they have more money. I want to request my colleagues that when it comes to that day that we will discuss the NGCDF, let's all be available. And let's not shy from the fact that we, as representatives of the people, do perform important roles in development, even if it means constitutional amendment, entrenching the CDF in the constitution of this country. We should not shy away, and we need to do that. Madam Speaker, in the 2010 constitution, the people of this country created two houses, the Senate and the National Assembly. They did not opt for the House of Commons and the House of Lords as in the United Kingdom. They did not go for the House of Representatives and the Congress as in the United States of America. They opted for a Senate with distinct responsibilities and opted for the National Assembly with distinct responsibilities as per Article 94, 95, and 96 of the Constitution. We should not, Madam Speaker, as leaders entrusted with leadership in this country, engage ourselves in tough wars that do not help the people of our nation. If it comes to a situation where we need to support the Senate so that they can be able to perform their oversight role, it is my submission, Madam Speaker, that we will have to do that. The Senate and the National Assembly is a brotherhood created by the people of this country to be able to serve them better. There is no lower house, there is no upper house. It's just a brotherhood of two houses separated by a passage, and that is what the people of this country decided to go for. Madam Speaker, the issue of subsidies. In all economies in this world, the better intervention is to provide subsidies at the production level, not at the consumption level. And I want to thank the President for that bold decision. We cannot subsidize consumption, we need to subsidize production. And as we do that, Madam Speaker, it is not just the issue of cheap fertilizer. We need to go beyond that so that we can give our people better seeds, we can give our people drought-resistant seeds, we can give our people the kind of technology they require that will improve agricultural production and productivity in this country. Madam Speaker, we are still basically an agricultural country. And if we were to grow, if we were to industrialize, if we were to improve the economy of this country, the fact of the matter is that the base of that improvement is agriculture. And all interventions that we must do in agriculture, even including irrigation, we need to do as a country, Madam Speaker, so that we can have enough food and have enough food for export. Madam Speaker, we should also be bold enough to remove the cartels and the busybodies that have occupied the value chain in this country, such that the farmer who moils and toils on a daily basis in this country is one very disadvantaged person, while those in the value chain are rich and the sweat from the farmer has got no benefit. Madam Speaker, we would wish that at the time when we're discussing all those interventions which have been proposed by the President, we should be able to give our ideas. Finally, Madam Speaker, as a student of communication, I was taught that people lose interest when you speak beyond 7 minutes. People start losing interest. And the speech by the President was a good 30 minutes. I want to say that speech was long enough to draw us to what we need to do as the legislature so that we can take this country forward. Madam Speaker, in agreement with what I've just said, I want to end my speech there and say thank you very much for giving me this opportunity so that also somebody else can be able to get the extra 2 minutes which I've donated to be able to speak on this important subject matter. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. I just want to let honorable members know that I have been informed and I have noted the challenges that some of the members have had with their cards. member for Kangema, member for Jomvu constituency, and member for Moiben constituency. I am informed that it shall be addressed, and therefore they shall get an opportunity in the afternoon. And also members, I think we've made very good progress, and I think we shall be able to make also similar progress in the afternoon. And I think for now, I would like to call the member for Soy constituency.
Madam Speaker, allow me to take this great opportunity first to thank the people of Soy for electing me to represent them as Member of Parliament for Soy. There were quite a number of issues that we discussed during the campaigns and also during the public participations, and I want to assure them that we are going to make sure that we are going to deliver. I know there are quite a number of challenges that are on the ground, but let them relax, and as soon as the government in place, we are going to make sure that we embark on those development projects that will change their lives. Secondly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, being our women representative and also the Deputy Speaker for the National Assembly. I want to thank you on behalf of the people of Uasin Gishu to say that as leaders from Uasin Gishu, you have our maximum support, and we shall work together for the people of Uasin Gishu. I will also want to thank all Kenyans, and in particular the people of Soy, who participated fully in ensuring that the government of Kenya Kwanza is now in place, and we want to assure them the only thank you that we are going to deliver is to make sure that we do the developments that we have set forth through our manifesto. Before I embark on the presidential speech, I want to say that we have challenges as a country, and Kenyans will be looking after Parliament and after the National Assembly to make sure that some of the independent bodies, including the IEBC, is made to function properly. We put there men and women who can stand independently so that we can avoid the Cherera and the group. So we want to call upon this Parliament to make sure that as we embark on business, one of the institutions that is so important and dear to Kenyans is the IEBC. We need to put up commissioners who are independent, who are fair, and who are able to adjudicate on elections. On the presidential speech, I would like to really congratulate the President for having made the best speech ever. Although some of our colleagues are saying it was the shortest speech, it might be short in length, but in content, it had everything that we need to look at so that we can improve the life of Kenyans. One of it that was actually our campaign child is the issue of bottom-up. And I want to tell all the hustlers in this country, let them relax. We are going to make sure that the hustlers fund is in place. And Madam Speaker, when we shall be putting up the legislation and the policies to govern the hustlers fund, we need to make sure that the policies that we are going to put in place will be accessible to the Mamamboga who is down there. We have had so many funds. We have had the WESO fund, we have had the youth fund, we have had the women fund, but this hustlers fund, if we are going to set it up, we set it up in a situation whereby it is accessible to those who didn't go to school, to those who went to school, and I am seeing the model that will work better is to anchor it through the CDF model so that we have officers from the ground, that is the village level, up to the national level so that we can make it a success. Another issue that I really support the president now that I come from Uasin Gishu, and you know Uasin Gishu, Madam Speaker, is an agricultural county. And we really want to thank the president for having put subsidy on the fertilizer. Now we have a subsidy on fertilizer going at 3,500. Our people are requesting that it can further come down to 2,000 or 2,500. It is very important that as a country, we tell ourselves the truth. We cannot subsidize consumption. We cannot subsidize ugali. We can only subsidize production, because at the end of the day, we need to live within our means. And the current national debt is so high that we have to tell Kenyans the truth. Let us tell Kenyans the truth that we cannot afford this manner of subsidies, especially the consumption subsidies. Let us subsidize our farmers. And I want to also take this opportunity. There is a lot of work to be done in the Ministry of Agriculture.
Honorable members, I want to thank you very much for your interest in the debate. A lot of you have put in great insights and great suggestions on this, and I want to appreciate each and every one of you. I also want to thank you from personally, because you have, for your congratulatory messages inside and outside the House, and thank you for that. And also for the balance of time, the Honorable Member for Soy constituency was on his feet, Honorable David Kiplagat, will have 6 minutes during the next sitting in the afternoon. Honorable members, and the time being 1 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Wednesday, 5th October, 2022 at 2:30 p.m.